are weak, and you know it. Look around your life right now. How many things are unfinished? How many times have you said, "I'll start tomorrow," but tomorrow never came? How often do you let your feelings decide what you do instead of doing what needs to be done? I know this because I used to be the same. Software lazy, full of excuses. I would set goals, make plans, tell myself I was going to change. And then, nothing. I'd fall right back into comfort, just like you. But then, I found something that ripped me out of my weakness and forced me to wake up. Stoicism. Not the boring philosophy you hear about in school. The brutal warrior-like discipline of the ancient Stoics. The mindset that made men like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus and Seneca unbreakable, even when life crushed them. The system that made them immune to suffering, excuses, and weakness. And when I applied it to my life, everything changed. Discipline stopped being a choice. It became my identity. I stopped waiting to feel motivated. I trained myself to obey, not negotiate. I burned every escape route, removed every weak excuse, and built a mind that would do what needed to be done, no matter how I felt. And now, I'm going to show you how to do the same. This isn't self-help fluff. This is a 2,000-year-old blueprint to turn your mind into a fortress. But I warn you, this will be harsh. It will break every illusion you have about why you're stuck. But if you're ready to stop being weak, if you want real, unbreakable discipline, keep watching. Because by the time you're done with this, you won't recognize yourself. You don't need motivation, you need discipline. The reason you struggle to get things done isn't because you're lazy. It's because you've been trained to avoid discomfort at all costs. Every modern convenience, every little shortcut, every life hack has made you weaker, softer, and more dependent on feeling good before taking action. But the truth is harsh. The more comfort you allow, the weaker you become. And it's not just you. Society has turned into a giant comfort trap, making people fragile, easily offended, addicted to entertainment, and terrified of anything that feels hard. You see it everywhere. People who give up at the first sign of difficulty, who break down over minor inconveniences, who live their entire lives seeking ease instead of growth. And I was one of them. For years, I let comfort run my life. If something felt hard, I'd find an excuse to delay it. If I didn't feel motivated, I'd convince myself that today wasn't the right time. I didn't realize that every time I gave in to comfort, I was slowly killing my own potential. And if you're being honest with yourself, you're doing the same. But that changes now. The Stoics understood something that most people today have forgotten. Comfort is the enemy of discipline. If you want to be strong, if you want to be unshakable, you have to tear yourself away from the mindset that things should be easy. Because the truth is, they won't be. And when you finally stop expecting them to be easy, you'll become unstoppable. That's what we're going to break down now. How comfort is slowly destroying your discipline, and how the Stoics trained their minds to be indestructible. If you've ever wondered why you can't stay consistent, why you keep giving in to distractions, why you struggle to push yourself when things get tough, this is the answer. And once you see it, you won't be able to go back to who you were before. This is going to hurt, but it will also set you free. You've been lied to. Society has convinced you that the goal of life is to be comfortable, to chase convenience, to avoid difficulty, to make everything as easy as possible. Everything around you is designed to eliminate effort. You can get food without cooking, entertainment without thinking, validation without achieving anything, and it feels good. But over time, it turns you into a passive, fragile version of yourself. one that panics the moment life demands something difficult. You don't have to fight for your survival anymore. No wild animals are hunting you. No wars are forcing you to be strong. No real hardships are shaping your character. You wake up in a soft bed, reach for your phone, scroll through distractions, and let the world tell you what to think. Comfort has replaced challenge. Convenience has replaced effort. And because of that, you've lost something vital. The ability to endure, to push through, to dominate your own weaknesses. And it's not just you. Look around. Most people today can't even handle minor discomfort. They break down when things don't go their way. They need constant validation to feel okay. They're slaves to their cravings, their emotions, their impulses, because they've never had to fight against them. The Stoics understood something crucial. If you don't train yourself to handle discomfort, the world will break you. And right now, you're training yourself the wrong way. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you're weakening your willpower, destroying your resilience, and making yourself easy to control. It's not just a bad habit, it's a disease, and it's time to cure it. The reason you struggle to be consistent, to push yourself, to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it, it all comes down to how your brain has been wired. Every time you give in to comfort, your brain rewards you with a hit of dopamine. That's the same chemical that gets released when people take drugs. The more you indulge in easy pleasures, scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, eating junk food, the more your brain becomes addicted to immediate gratification. This is why discipline feels impossible for so many people. Their brains have been trained to crave instant rewards instead of long-term progress. They want to feel good now, even if it destroys them later. The Stoics saw this weakness clearly. They knew that if you let pleasure control you, you become a slave to your own mind. That's why they trained themselves to resist comfort, to delay gratification, to do what was hard instead of what was easy. Because they understood that freedom comes from self-control, not indulgence. If you want to rebuild your discipline, you have to rewire your brain. That means cutting off the constant need for easy pleasure and replacing it with something stronger, the ability to choose pain when necessary, to push through struggle, to dominate your own impulses. You have to retrain your mind not to seek comfort, but to seek growth. The Stoics didn't just talk about discipline, they lived it. They didn't wait for hardship to come. They actively put themselves in difficult situations to get stronger. Seneca would sleep on the floor and wear cheap clothes to remind himself that he didn't need luxury to be happy. Marcus Aurelius trained his mind to expect the worst, so nothing could ever shake him. Epictetus, who was born a slave, taught that real freedom doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from mastering your response to it. They didn't try to make life easier, they made themselves stronger. And that's what you have to do. Stop avoiding discomfort. Seek it. Go against the modern mindset that tells you to make things easy. Instead, train yourself to do the opposite, to walk into difficulty, to choose the harder path, to take on challenges when you don't have to. Every time you do something difficult, you break the chains of comfort that are holding you back. You prove to yourself that you are stronger than your cravings, stronger than your emotions, stronger than the weak version of you that wants to take the easy way out. There is no magic pill for discipline. There is no secret trick. There is only one harsh truth. You have to stop choosing comfort. If you keep waiting for the right moment to be disciplined, you will never become the person you want to be. The Stoics didn't wait for motivation. They acted every single day, whether they felt like it or not. That's what you need to do now. Because here's the truth. If you don't take control of your mind, someone else will. Society is designed to make you passive, to keep you addicted to ease, to turn you into a follower instead of a leader. And the only way to break free is to train yourself like a warrior, to build a mind that can't be broken, no matter what life throws at you. This is your wake-up call. Stop tolerating comfort. Stop letting weakness win. Stop being the person who makes excuses instead of making progress. Because once you do, you will never be the same again. You've been lied to about discipline. People say, you just need motivation. Motivation is a scam. It's an unreliable friend who shows up when things are easy and disappears the moment you need it most. If you wait to feel like doing something, you will never get anything done. That's why most people stay stuck. They wait until they want to work out, until they feel ready to change their life, until they feel like being productive. And what happens? They wait forever. I used to be that person. I used to sit around thinking, I'll do it when I have more energy, or I just need the right mindset before I start. But that day never came. I was trapped in the same cycle of excuses, the same cycle of waiting for inspiration to hit me like a lightning bolt. But let me tell you something. Motivation is never coming to save you. If you rely on it, you will stay weak. You will stay the person who could have been great, but never was. The reason is simple. Discipline has nothing to do with how you feel. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't wait to be inspired to do hard things. They trained themselves to obey, to follow through, to act, not negotiate, with their own thoughts. There was no, do I feel like it today? There was only, it must be done, so I do it. That is how I had to train myself. And that is how you must train yourself. Like a soldier. Not someone who follows their feelings, but someone who follows orders. Orders that come from within. You must become the commander of your own mind, where thoughts of hesitation, doubt, or weakness are ignored like background noise. Because when you master this, you will be unstoppable. You will no longer wake up debating whether you should work out or not. You will no longer delay tasks just because they feel overwhelming. You will no longer waste hours waiting for that magical spark of motivation to kick in. You will act because action is your default setting. The problem is, most people have spent their entire lives negotiating with themselves. They hear the alarm clock in the morning and ask themselves if they feel like getting up. They look at their to-do list and decide if they're in the mood to tackle it. They know what they should be doing, but they sit there, debating, bargaining, trying to find a way to make it easier. That is the behavior of a weak mind, one that has never been trained for war. And make no mistake, life is a war. Every day your mind is at war with distraction, with temptation, with procrastination. If you don't have an army of discipline, you will lose. A soldier does not wake up and decide whether or not to follow orders. A soldier follows orders because that is the code. That is how they survive. That is how they win. This is exactly how I had to approach my own life. I had to stop following my emotions and start following a code of discipline, of consistency, of non-negotiable action. My feelings didn't matter. Only my actions did. I won't lie to you. This was not easy. I had spent years being weak, years letting comfort run my life, and breaking that habit felt like war. But here's the truth. You don't need to be born disciplined. You become disciplined through relentless training, and that training starts with killing the voice inside your head that asks, "Do I feel like it?" When I started training my mind this way, everything changed. I stopped debating whether or not I should do what needed to be done. I just did it, whether I was tired, whether I was in the mood, whether it was raining, whether it was inconvenient. I acted anyway. I stopped negotiating with weakness, and once I reached that point, I became unstoppable. This is the real secret to discipline. It is not about fighting yourself every day. It is about eliminating the fight entirely. When a soldier trains, they do not sit around debating whether or not to run, to push, to fight. They do not wake up wondering if today is a good day to be disciplined. Their actions are drilled into them so deeply that hesitation does not exist. That is how you must train your own mind. Right now, you are used to operating based on feelings. If you feel tired, you rest. If you feel bored, you distract yourself. If something feels uncomfortable, you avoid it. But this is a system designed for failure because it is entirely unreliable. You cannot build a strong life on a foundation that constantly shifts. What you need is a system, a protocol of action that happens automatically without question. This is how elite warriors are trained. They do not rely on motivation. They do not rely on how they feel in the moment. They have trained themselves to act on command. And I had to do the same thing. I had to program myself to stop waiting, stop negotiating, stop making decisions based on emotions. My mind had to obey, not debate. Most people live their lives as slaves to their own emotions. They let their feelings determine what they do, and because of that, they stay stuck. They are inconsistent, unreliable, easily distracted. But those who break free from this trap, those who learn to act regardless of feelings, become unstoppable. The secret is this: discipline is about pre-deciding. If you wait until the moment of decision, you will always find an excuse. Your brain will always give you a reason to delay, to soften the edges, to convince yourself that skipping this one time won't matter. But if the decision is already made, if there is no debate, no hesitation, no option to back out, you will execute every single time. This is how the greatest warriors operate. They do not go into battle hoping they will be brave enough to fight. They have already made the decision. They know, without question, that when the moment comes, they will act. Their minds are conditioned to obey, not negotiate. If you want to develop unshakable discipline, you must do the same. You must train your mind like a soldier, strict, unwavering, absolute. There is no, "I don't feel like it." There is no, "I'll do it later." There is only, "It must be done now." That is the difference between those who achieve great things and those who live in regret. One group does what needs to be done, no matter how they feel. The other waits to feel ready, and they never do. I used to be in that second group, but once I stopped waiting and started executing, I broke free. I won't lie to you. There will be times when your body begs you to stop, when your mind tries to convince you that you deserve a break, that skipping one time won't matter. This is the weakness inside you trying to survive. And in that moment, you will have a choice. You can negotiate with it, entertain it, let it seduce you back into your old ways, or you can act anyway. And here is the truth. The more you act anyway, the stronger you become. Every time you push through resistance, you teach your mind that you are in charge, that you do not negotiate with laziness, that you do not tolerate weakness. Over time, hesitation disappears. You reach a point where your mind is no longer your enemy. It becomes your greatest weapon. This is what true discipline looks like. It is not glamorous. It is not about morning routines or motivational speeches or tricks to make things easier. It is about hard, relentless, consistent action. It's about training your mind to execute, whether it wants to or not. At the end of the day, No one is coming to force you to be disciplined. No one will drag you out of bed. No one will hold your hand and make sure you follow through. It is you, and only you. Either you take control now, or you live the rest of your life as a slave to your weakest self. The choice is yours. But understand this: discipline is not about what you feel. It is about what you do. You have no excuse left. You know discipline is not about motivation. You know action is the only way forward. But here's the truth: most people will never accept. Even if you understand this, even if you train yourself to act without hesitation, none of it matters if you don't take full responsibility for your own life. This is where most people fail. They wait. They wait for someone to push them, to believe in them, to help them, to guide them. They wait for the right circumstances, the right timing, the right support system, and while they wait, life passes them by. They spend years blaming others, blaming their past, blaming external forces, convincing themselves that their failures are not their fault. And the more they do this, the more powerless they become. I used to be one of those people. I had excuses for everything. If something went wrong, it wasn't because of me. It was because of the situation, the bad luck, the unfair system, the people who didn't support me. I was convinced that if only things were different, if only I had better opportunities, if only someone stepped in and showed me the way, I would finally succeed. But that was a lie. No one was coming to save me, and no one is coming to save you. This was the hardest lesson I ever had to learn, because once I truly understood it, there was no more room for complaining, no more room for self-pity, no more blaming anything or anyone. I had to face the cold, unforgiving truth that if I wanted my life to change, it was up to me. Every single problem, every failure, every weakness, I owned it. The moment I stopped looking for outside solutions and took full control of my actions, my thoughts, my discipline, everything changed. But most people will never do this. They are addicted to blaming something outside themselves. It's easier to say, "I don't have enough time." It's easier to say, "People don't support me." It's easier to say, "The system is unfair." Because the moment you stop blaming, the moment you accept that everything is your responsibility, you also accept that you are the only one who can fix it. That's the real reason most people stay stuck, because once you take ownership, there is no one left to blame but yourself. If you are undisciplined, it's your fault. If you are out of shape, it's your fault. If your career is going nowhere, if your life is not what you want it to be, if you are weak, lazy, inconsistent, that's on you. No one is stopping you from becoming great. No one is forcing you to stay where you are. And if you don't like that truth, it's because you've spent your whole life running from it. This is what the Stoics mastered. They had no room for victimhood, no room for complaining, no room for self-pity. They understood that life was brutal, unfair, and filled with obstacles. But instead of wasting time whining about it, they focused on the only thing that mattered. What can I do about it? And that is the only question you should ever ask yourself. Not, why is this happening to me? Not, who is to blame? But, what am I going to do about it? Most people waste their lives waiting for someone else to fix things for them. They wait for inspiration, for motivation, for approval, for permission. They wait for the world to be fair. But the world doesn't care. The world will keep moving with or without you. And every second you spend waiting is a second wasted. Taking radical self-ownership means you eliminate all excuses. It means you never again say, "I can't because of this or that." It means you wake up every single day and ask, what am I going to do to move forward? It means you stop complaining, stop hoping for a savior, and take full control of your mind and actions. And this is not just about work ethic. This is about your entire life, your emotions, your responsibility, your thoughts, your responsibility, your failures, your responsibility, even the things that weren't your fault. What are you going to do about them? Because sitting around feeling sorry for yourself won't change a thing. There are people who have suffered more than you, who have been through worse than you, who have had every reason to give up, but they still found a way to rise. Because they understood one thing: you either control your life or your life controls you. The problem is, most people don't want to take full ownership. They want someone to feel sorry for them. They want to be rescued. They want to be told it's not their fault, so they can keep living in their comfort zone. But here's the harsh truth. No one cares about your excuses. No one is going to wake you up in the morning and force you to work harder. No one is going to hold your hand and make sure you stay disciplined. That's all on you. If you fail, that's your fault. If you succeed, that's your responsibility. It's all on you. The moment you truly accept this, your entire mindset changes. You stop seeing obstacles as things that hold you back and start seeing them as things you must overcome. You stop expecting the world to be easy and start preparing yourself to handle whatever comes your way. Most people crumble under pressure because they have never trained themselves to take ownership. They are used to blaming outside forces, so when life throws something hard at them, they collapse. They think, why is this happening to me? Instead of thinking, what do I do next? That's why radical self-ownership is the most powerful mindset you can have. Because once you own everything, your actions, your failures, your mindset, you become untouchable. You stop wasting energy on things you can't control. You stop feeling helpless because you realize you are never helpless. You always have control over how you respond, how you think, how you move forward. And when you live this way, excuses stop existing. You don't wait for a better mood to start working. You don't blame the situation when things get hard. You don't sit around hoping that one day you'll feel ready. You take action every single day. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what obstacles you've faced. It doesn't matter how unfair life has been to you. What matters is what you do next. And if you keep waiting for someone to save you, you will be waiting forever. No one is coming to push you. No one is coming to make sure you stay disciplined. No one is going to do the work for you. This is your life. You either take control of it or you let it slip away. The choice is yours. But if you want to be strong, if you want to be disciplined, if you want to live the life you were meant to live, you must accept one thing. It's all on you. You already know that no one is coming to save you. You already understand that your life is in your hands, but there's still something holding you back, something so toxic, so addictive, that it keeps even the smartest, strongest people stuck in a cycle of failure. Self-pity. Self-pity is the disease that destroys potential before it even has a chance to grow. It convinces you that your struggles are unique, that life is unfair to you specifically, that you are somehow a victim of forces beyond your control. It makes you believe that because things are hard, you have the right to stop trying. It whispers in your ear that you deserve sympathy, that you deserve an easier road, that you deserve to be comforted instead of challenged. And the worst part, it feels good. That's why people cling to it. Self-pity gives you an excuse. It lets you avoid responsibility. It allows you to sink into your weaknesses and get rewarded for it. People will listen. They will comfort you. They will tell you that you're right, that it isn't your fault, that you're justified in doing nothing. And before you know it, you've built your entire identity around your struggles instead of your strength. I know because I used to do it. I used to sit in my misery and tell myself that my situation was worse than everyone else's. I would focus on every unfair thing that had ever happened to me, replaying my failures like a movie on repeat. And I convinced myself that because I had struggled, because I had suffered, I deserved something in return. I deserved success. I deserved recognition. I deserved an easier path. But what I didn't realize is that the world doesn't care. The world does not reward you for suffering. It rewards you for what you do despite suffering. That is why self-pity is so dangerous. It keeps you looking backward instead of forward. It makes you weak. And weakness invites more suffering. The more you sit in self-pity, the worse your situation becomes. The less action you take, the more you convince yourself that you are a victim. And before you know it, your mind is completely poisoned. The Stoics knew this. That's why they never allowed themselves to fall into the trap of feeling sorry for themselves. They knew that hardship was part of life. They expected it. They prepared for it. And when it came, they faced it head-on instead of collapsing under it. When I first studied Stoicism, I was confronted with something brutal. No one was responsible for my pain but me. Yes, bad things had happened to me. Yes, life had been unfair. But my reaction to it, that was mine. And for the first time in my life, I had to face the truth. I was the reason I was stuck. Not my past, not my circumstances, not other people. And that realization changed everything. Because if I was the problem, I was also the solution. I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I stopped telling my story like I was some tragic hero in a movie, waiting for a rescue that was never coming. I stopped expecting people to care about my excuses. And instead, I took action. Self-pity is a choice. You either feed it or you starve it. And the more you starve it, the stronger you become. The only way to kill self-pity is through extreme accountability. The Stoics believed that no matter what happened, you were responsible for how you responded. That means no blaming, no complaining, no waiting for someone else to fix things. Just brutal, relentless ownership of every thought, every action, every failure. Most people don't want to do this. They like their self-pity. They like feeling like the world owes them something. But that is weakness disguised as comfort, and if you allow it to stay, it will rot your potential from the inside out. The problem with self-pity is that it always wants more. It doesn't just want to exist, it wants to take over. It starts as a thought, then becomes a habit, then becomes who you are. You start identifying as someone who has been wronged, someone who is unlucky, someone who is trapped. And before you even realize it, you have completely given up your power. That's why I had to stop. That's why you have to stop. Because self-pity is the greatest thief of all. It steals time, energy, and opportunity. It takes away your ability to fight, your ability to push through, your ability to grow. It keeps you locked in the past, endlessly replaying the same story instead of writing a new one. The reason Stoicism is so powerful is because it refuses to accept this kind of weakness. It forces you to confront yourself in ways that most people never will. It demands that you stop expecting fairness and start expecting hardship. That you stop looking for comfort and start looking for challenge. Because the moment you do that, everything changes. When you stop feeling sorry for yourself, you start taking action. When you stop seeing yourself as a victim, you start becoming a leader. When you stop waiting for life to be easier, you become stronger. but you have to make the decision. No one else is going to do it for you. No one else can pull you out of self-pity. You have to be the one to cut it off at the root. And that means training your mind every single day to reject weakness, to reject excuses, to reject the soft, easy path that leads nowhere. I won't lie to you. This is not easy. It is much easier to sit in your sadness and tell yourself that you have no control. It is much easier to find people who will validate your pain instead of push you to move forward. It is much easier to choose comfort over accountability. But easy is what got you here in the first place. If you want to break out of the cycle, you have to do what is hard. You have to hold yourself accountable at a level that most people never will. You have to stop explaining your failures and start fixing them. You have to stop repeating the same complaints and start changing your actions. The next time you hear yourself complaining about something, stop. Cut yourself off. Ask yourself one thing: what am I going to do about it? If the answer is nothing, then you have no right to complain. If you are not willing to take action, then you are choosing to stay where you are. And if you are choosing to stay where you are, then you do not get to feel sorry for yourself. That is the brutal reality of self-accountability, and that is the only way out. If you want to become stronger, you have to reject self-pity like a disease. You have to treat it as the enemy, because that is exactly what it is. It will whisper to you. It will try to pull you back in. It will tell you that it's okay to feel bad for yourself just this once. But you must say no. You must recognize it for what it is, a trap designed to keep you weak. And you must fight it with everything you have. Because the second you do, you will feel something that self-pity could never give you. Power. Real power. The power of knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what obstacles come your way, you will not break. That is what the Stoics knew. That is what I learned. And that is what you must embrace if you want to be free. Excuses are just dressed-up lies. They feel real, they sound reasonable, and they make you believe that waiting is the smart thing to do. But deep down, you know the truth. Every time you let an excuse stop you, you are choosing weakness over action. You already know self-pity is poison. You already know that waiting for the right moment is an illusion. So what's left? Action. But not just any action. Relentless, disciplined, excuse-free action. The kind that moves forward no matter the circumstances, no matter the obstacles, no matter how you feel. This is what separates those who achieve from those who stay stuck. The world is filled with people who could have done something great, but didn't. They had potential, they had dreams, they had ideas, but they let hesitation, doubt, or fear win. They waited for motivation. They waited for the perfect time. They waited until things felt just right. And they waited so long that they accomplished nothing. I refuse to be one of those people. And if you want to live a life of discipline, neither can you. This is where the philosophy of do it anyway comes in. It is the cure for hesitation. It is the answer to every excuse your mind tries to give you. It is what separates those who take control of their destiny from those who waste their lives explaining why they never got started. The Stoics mastered this mindset. They didn't just accept hardship, they acted in the middle of it. Seneca was exiled, stripped of his wealth, betrayed by his own emperor, and still he wrote some of the greatest works on resilience ever recorded. Epictetus was born a slave, lived with a crippled leg, endured years of suffering, and still he became one of the most powerful philosophers in history. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, ruled through plagues, wars, and betrayals, yet still kept his mind sharp, his discipline unshaken, his principles firm. They didn't wait for good conditions. They didn't let excuses take over. They didn't wait to feel like taking action. They did it anyway. That is the mindset you need. That is the standard you must hold yourself to. It doesn't matter if you're tired. It doesn't matter if you don't feel like it. It doesn't matter if the conditions aren't perfect. You act, you move, you execute. Most people live their lives as slaves to their emotions. They wake up and check if they're in the mood to work, to train, to take action, and if they're not, they do nothing. But those who succeed do not live this way. They do not wait to be in the mood. They act regardless. They know that waiting for motivation is the fastest way to become weak. I had to train myself to live by this principle. I used to be the person who waited, the person who let small obstacles stop me, the person who said, "I'll do it later." But later never came, and I realized something brutal. Every time I chose comfort, I was choosing failure. So I stopped. I stopped waiting for motivation. I stopped giving myself permission to make excuses. I stopped needing to feel like taking action. And I started living by one rule: do it anyway. When I wake up and I don't want to get up, I do it anyway. When I feel tired but I have work to do, I do it anyway. When something feels overwhelming, when doubt creeps in, when fear tries to stop me, I do it anyway, because that is the only way forward. The reason this mindset is so powerful is because it eliminates hesitation. The moment you stop debating with yourself, you gain back all the energy that was being wasted on indecision. You stop spending mental effort wondering if you should do something and start putting all your effort into actually doing it. Hesitation is the silent killer of success. It doesn't just delay action, it kills it completely. Every second you spend debating whether to start is a second wasted. And most of the time, hesitation turns into inaction. The mind starts finding more and more reasons why now is not the right time, why you're not ready, why maybe you should wait just a little longer. But when you commit to do it anyway, hesitation is no longer part of your life. The moment you think about doing something, you act. No second thoughts, no waiting for the perfect moment, just movement, just execution. That is how I had to train myself, and it is the only way to break free from a life of procrastination, hesitation, and regret. It's not enough to know what you need to do. Everyone knows what they should be doing. The difference is in who does it and who doesn't. And the only way to guarantee that you will do it is to remove all debate from the process. This is how the Stoics operated. They didn't sit around thinking about whether they felt like taking action. They didn't waste time debating whether their circumstances were good enough to start. They moved. They acted. They lived by the principle that action must come first, feelings second. And when you train yourself to live this way, something incredible happens. You stop being controlled by your emotions. You stop feeling like a prisoner inside your own mind. You stop wasting time waiting for the right moment, and instead, you become someone who moves through life with clarity, purpose, and unstoppable momentum. Most people are exhausted not because they work too hard, but because they hesitate too much. Their energy is drained by indecision, by second-guessing, by constantly battling themselves over whether to take action. But when you cut hesitation out completely, you are free. The power of do it anyway is that it forces you to become a person of action. It forces you to be disciplined even when you don't feel like it. It forces you to live at a higher level than most people ever will. And the best part? The more you do it, the easier it gets. The first few times, it's hard. You will feel resistance. Your mind will try to pull you back into old habits. It will tell you that just this once, you can skip it, that it's okay to take it easy. But the more you override that voice, the weaker it gets, and the stronger you become. Until one day, you don't even hesitate anymore. You just act. And when you reach that point, when taking action becomes second nature, you will realize something incredible. Nothing can stop you. Not fear, not doubt, not circumstances, not emotions, because you have trained yourself to move forward no matter what. This is what separates those who accomplish from those who stay stuck. This is what separates those who take control of their lives from those who waste them. And this is the mindset that will make you unbreakable. Do it anyway, every single time. No excuses, no hesitation, no debate. Because in the end, there are two kinds of people in this world, those who wait and those who act. And only one of them wins. You already know that action is everything. You already know that hesitation is the enemy. But even if you take action, even if you force yourself to move forward, there is one thing that can still break you: your emotions. Most people don't fail because of external circumstances. They fail because they are mentally weak. They let their emotions control them. They let frustration, anger, sadness, and doubt dictate their actions. And because of that, they stay stuck. They give up when things feel too hard. They break under pressure. They let their feelings override logic, discipline, and progress. I used to be one of those people. No matter how much I wanted to be disciplined, I kept finding myself dragged down by my own emotions. If I felt unmotivated, I slowed down. If I felt frustrated, I got discouraged. If something felt unfair, I wasted time complaining about it. It wasn't external obstacles stopping me. It was my own mind. And I realized something brutal. If I wanted to be strong, I had to train myself to stop reacting like a weak person. I had to develop emotional resistance. I had to build mental calluses that made me unshakable. That is what Stoicism teaches. It is the ultimate training ground for emotional control. It turns fragile minds into indestructible forces. It rewires your brain so that no matter what happens, no matter how much pressure, how much stress, how much chaos, you do not break. The reason most people are emotionally weak is because they have never trained themselves to handle discomfort. Every time they feel a negative emotion, they look for an escape. If they are sad, they distract themselves. If they are anxious, they avoid the situation. If they feel like quitting, they justify it. And because they do this over and over again, they never build the ability to endure. This is why people get so easily offended, so easily discouraged, so easily broken. They have never trained their minds to withstand hardship. They think toughness is something you are born with. It's not. It is something you build. It is something you develop through deliberate resistance training, by exposing yourself to difficulty, by refusing to let emotions dictate your actions, by teaching yourself that pain, stress, and discomfort do not control you. I had to train myself like this. I had to stop running from my emotions and start facing them. When I felt frustration, I used it as fuel instead of an excuse. When I felt anxiety, I pushed forward instead of backing down. When I felt the urge to quit, I rejected it without hesitation. And the more I did this, the stronger I became. This is the key. You do not get stronger by avoiding emotions. You get stronger by conditioning yourself to handle them. You cannot control what emotions arise, but you can control whether or not you let them weaken you. Every time you let an emotion stop you, you reinforce weakness. But every time you push through, you reinforce strength. This is how you build mental calluses, through exposure, through endurance, through relentless resistance to weakness. Most people don't realize that their emotions are like muscles. If you never train them, they stay weak. But if you expose them to difficulty, if you force them to endure, they adapt, they harden, they become unshakable. This is why the Stoics deliberately exposed themselves to hardship. They knew that without resistance, they would never develop true strength. Seneca would practice poverty even though he was wealthy, because he wanted to train his mind to be immune to fear. Epictetus, who had been a slave, trained himself to accept suffering without breaking. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, trained himself to remain calm and disciplined even when surrounded by betrayal, war, and death. They were not naturally strong. They became strong through deliberate mental training. That is what you must do. You must stop looking for comfort. Stop looking for ways to soften reality. Stop expecting things to feel easy. Instead, expose yourself to discomfort on purpose. Challenge yourself to endure emotions without reacting. Build your tolerance for stress, for pain, for setbacks. The next time you feel frustration, don't try to escape it. Sit with it. Let it burn. Let it push you forward instead of hold you back. The next time you feel like quitting, refuse. Stay in the discomfort. Force yourself to continue. Prove to your own mind that emotions do not control you. The next time something feels overwhelming, break it down and move forward anyway. Train yourself to see obstacles as training, not as reasons to stop. This is emotional resistance training. It is the process of conditioning your mind to be unbreakable. It is the process of rewiring yourself to act regardless of feelings. It is the only way to develop true mental strength. Most people will never do this. They will keep running from discomfort. They will keep letting emotions decide their actions. And because of that, they will stay weak. They will stay controlled by feelings instead of principles. They will stay trapped in their own fragile mindset. But you do not have to be like most people. You can train yourself to be different. You can train yourself to be stronger. You can train yourself to be unshakable. The choice is yours. Either continue living as someone who is ruled by their emotions, or start training yourself to be someone who acts with discipline no matter what. If you commit to this, if you start conditioning your mind like a warrior instead of a victim, you will become unstoppable. You will reach a level of strength that most people will never understand. And when that happens, nothing, no feeling, no setback, no external force will ever have power over you again. Weakness doesn't always show itself as laziness or fear. Sometimes it hides behind pleasure. It disguises itself as comfort, indulgence, and convenience. And the worst part, it feels good until it destroys you. You already know how dangerous emotional weakness is. You've already seen how hesitation, doubt, and fear hold you back. But now you have to face something even more deceptive: self-indulgence, the silent killer of discipline, the slow poison that weakens your mind, your body, and your future. The greatest enemy of strength isn't hardship. It's pleasure without restraint. Most people don't even realize they are trapped. They don't see self-indulgence as a problem. They tell themselves they deserve it. They tell themselves they are just enjoying life. But what they are really doing is escaping reality, numbing themselves, and slowly losing control. I know because I was that person. I let comfort make me weak. I gave in to every small craving, every unnecessary luxury, every distraction that felt good in the moment, and I convinced myself it was harmless. But over time, I noticed something. The more I indulged, the harder it became to be disciplined. The more I gave in, the weaker I became. Self-indulgence is not just about food, money, or entertainment. It is about anything that prioritizes temporary pleasure over long-term strength. It is the need for comfort at all costs. It is the addiction to ease. And it is the reason why most people never achieve anything great. Stoicism is brutal in its rejection of self-indulgence because it understands one thing: pleasure, when uncontrolled, is more dangerous than pain. Pain forces you to grow, but pleasure, when abused, makes you soft. It makes you lose urgency. It makes you dependent on things that do nothing for your mind, your body, or your future. And worst of all, the more you indulge, the harder it is to stop. Self-indulgence is a slow suicide. It doesn't kill you immediately, but it erodes your willpower, your focus, and your resilience little by little. It makes you more fragile, more dependent, more easily broken. Until one day, you wake up and realize that you have lost control. The reason this happens is simple. Your mind adapts to whatever you give it. If you constantly seek comfort, it will expect comfort. If you constantly chase pleasure, it will demand more of it. If you keep feeding your cravings, they will grow stronger. And before you know it, you are no longer in charge. Your impulses are. That is why Stoicism demands discipline. It demands restraint. It demands that you train yourself to resist pleasure, not because pleasure is evil, but because letting pleasure control you is the fastest way to become weak. Marcus Aurelius, a man who had access to more wealth, power, and luxury than anyone else, rejected indulgence at every turn. He knew that pleasure was the greatest threat to his discipline. He knew that the moment he let himself become soft, he would no longer be capable of leading, of enduring, of staying sharp. Seneca warned about the dangers of excess. He saw firsthand how people who had everything were often the most miserable, the most lost, the most undisciplined, because they had never trained themselves to endure without it. They had never learned to control their desires, and because of that, their desires controlled them. Epictetus, who was born a slave, understood better than anyone that freedom does not come from having more, but from needing less. He saw indulgence as a prison, a trap that kept people enslaved to their cravings, their comforts, their weaknesses. And this is the harsh truth. If you cannot say no to pleasure, you are not free. You are a slave to whatever feels good in the moment. You are ruled by your lowest impulses instead of by your highest goals. And that is the path to failure. Breaking free from self-indulgence is not easy, because pleasure is addictive. It rewards you instantly. It gives you a momentary high, and it makes you forget, just for a second, that you are avoiding the real work. But if you want to be strong, if you want to be disciplined, if you want to take full control over your life, you must learn to resist it. The first step is awareness. Stop lying to yourself. Stop justifying unnecessary indulgence as self-care, as a reward, as something you deserve. Be honest. Ask yourself, is this making me stronger, or is this making me weaker? If the answer is weaker, cut it out. The second step is practice. Resisting pleasure is a muscle. If you never train it, it stays weak. But the more you deny yourself unnecessary indulgence, the stronger your willpower becomes. Say no to the extra food you don't need. Say no to the distractions that waste your time. Say no to the luxuries that make you soft. And every time you do, you are training yourself to be stronger. The third step is embracing discomfort. Most people indulge not because they need to, but because they are running from discomfort. They are running from boredom, from stress, from anything that requires effort. But the more you run from discomfort, the weaker you become. The solution is to lean into it. to train yourself to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. The final step is to change your relationship with pleasure. The goal is not to eliminate all joy from life. The goal is to control it, to make sure it serves you instead of the other way around. Earn your pleasure. Make sure it comes from something real, something that strengthens you rather than weakens you. A hard-earned victory, a disciplined routine, a moment of peace that comes from knowing you are in control. That is real pleasure. The kind that does not make you weaker, but stronger. Most people will never do this. They will keep indulging. They will keep chasing comfort. They will keep convincing themselves that they can have discipline and indulge in everything they crave, and they will fail. But if you have read this far, you are not like most people. You are not looking for the easy way out. You are looking for strength, for control, for mastery over yourself. And that means you must reject the comfort that weakens you. You must stop feeding your impulses. You must train yourself to be disciplined, not just in hardship, but in pleasure. Because in the end, the strongest people are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. The most powerful person is the one who can walk away from anything that does not serve their mission. The one who can resist temptation without hesitation. The one who does not let cravings decide their actions. That is the person you must become. The one who is in full control. The one who does not need to escape through indulgence, because they have already built a life they do not need to escape from. Self-indulgence is slow suicide, and the only way to stop it is to fight against it every single day. To train yourself, to resist, to build discipline so strong that nothing, no comfort, no pleasure, no craving, can ever control you again. You already know that self-indulgence is a slow death. You've seen how comfort, pleasure, and waiting for the right moment turn people into weak versions of themselves. But there is one final illusion that still traps most people. The belief that there is time. Time is the greatest lie you tell yourself. You think you have time to start later. You think you have time to fix your mistakes. You think you have time to waste another day, another week, another year. But you don't. Most people live as if they are guaranteed more time. They make excuses. They delay action. They tell themselves they will get serious eventually. And before they know it, their life is gone, wasted in a series of tomorrows that never came. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. That is why they trained themselves to see every day as if it were their last. Because when you live with the knowledge that your time is running out, everything changes. Your excuses disappear. Your hesitation vanishes. Your priorities become sharp. I had to learn this the hard way. I spent years thinking I had time. I waited. I delayed. I let days pass without urgency. And then I looked back and realized how much I had lost. Not because something stopped me, not because I wasn't capable, but because I was living under the illusion that there would always be more time. That is why I started following what I call the dead man's rule. It is a mental exercise that kills every excuse instantly. It is the idea that you are already gone, and every second you have right now is a gift you were never supposed to have. If you had already died, what would you give for one more day? If you had been taken away too soon, what would you do differently? How much urgency would you feel? How little would your fears and hesitations matter? That is how you must live. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. The reason people waste their lives is because they believe they will always have more of it. They let themselves get caught in the small, meaningless distractions. They let themselves wait until they feel ready. They act like time is on their side. But the truth is, You do not control how much time you have. You do not know how many days, months, or years are left. And if you don't act with urgency now, you never will. The Stoics had a phrase for this: memento mori. Remember, you must die, not in a poetic, abstract way. In a real, undeniable way, the same fate awaits you as it does everyone else. The only difference is how you use the time you have left. This is the secret weapon against every excuse. You don't have time to overthink. You don't have time to delay. You don't have time to let small distractions pull you away from your mission. You must act now. Most people do not live. They exist. They go through their days passively, waiting for something to happen, waiting for a sign, waiting for the right conditions, and then they die without ever truly living. You cannot be one of those people. You must train yourself to see life for what it is, a limited, fragile, unpredictable gift. And that means you must act now, not when you feel like it, not when it's easy, now. When I started practicing this mindset, my entire approach to life changed. The things I was once afraid of doing became urgent. The distractions that once pulled me in seemed ridiculous. The hesitation I once felt vanished, because none of it mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was what I was doing in this moment. Every second wasted is a second you will never get back. Every excuse you make is a moment you could have used to build, to create, to push forward. Every delay is a decision to let time slip through your fingers. You may think you have years ahead of you, but what if you don't? What if this is all you get? What if this was your last chance to do something meaningful, to become the person you were meant to be? That is the mindset that separates those who take control of their lives from those who waste them. You don't have time to argue with yourself. You don't have time to be scared. You don't have time to entertain weakness. You must act. The dead man's rule is the ultimate weapon against procrastination. It forces you to strip away everything unimportant. It forces you to stop overthinking. It forces you to move before you have time to hesitate. Most people say they want to change. They say they want to be stronger, more disciplined, more focused. But they don't act like it. They live like there will always be a second chance, another opportunity, another tomorrow. But the harsh truth is this: there is no tomorrow. There is only right now. If you are waiting for something to push you, this is it. If you are waiting for a sign, this is it. If you are waiting for the right time, it has already passed. Nothing will change until you decide to act. Nothing will happen until you start moving. Nothing will be different unless you make it different, right now. So stop waiting. Stop pretending that life will wait for you to be ready. Stop living as if you have unlimited chances. Because the moment you truly understand that you are already dead, you will finally start living. You have already seen how time is not guaranteed. You have already learned that waiting is the most dangerous mistake you can make. But there is something even more deceptive, something that keeps you chained, something that controls your every action even when you think you are in control: your emotions. Most people are not controlled by logic. They are not controlled by reason, discipline, or purpose. They are controlled by how they feel. And that is why they fail. That is why they break under pressure. That is why they hesitate, overthink, procrastinate, and sabotage themselves, because they let their emotions decide their actions instead of their mind. I had to confront this in myself. Every time I put off difficult tasks, every time I avoided discomfort, every time I made excuses, I realized the truth. I was a slave to my feelings. If I didn't feel like doing something, I avoided it. If I felt tired, I stopped. If I felt discouraged, I slowed down, and every time I let my emotions lead, I lost. This is how most people live. They wake up and check how they feel before deciding if they will take action. They let their emotions set the course for their entire day, their entire life, and then they wonder why they never achieve what they say they want. But here's the reality. Your emotions do not care about your success. They do not care about your goals, your discipline, your future. They are temporary impulses that react to your environment, your habits, and your weakest desires. And if you let them lead, you will never break free. Stoicism is the antidote. It teaches you to strip emotions of their power, to stop treating them as facts and start seeing them as impulses to be controlled, to stop letting feelings decide your actions and start making decisions based on logic, discipline, and purpose. The Stoics understood that emotions are not the enemy, but being ruled by them is. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to act with reason, not impulse. Seneca reminded himself that emotions are just thoughts, not commands. Epictetus, who endured slavery and suffering, understood that the moment you let emotions control you, you become a prisoner of them. This is what I had to train myself to do. I stopped asking myself how I felt about taking action. I stopped negotiating with my emotions. I stopped giving in to the voice in my head that told me to take it easy, to wait until I was in the mood, to listen to my doubts. Instead, I did what had to be done, no matter how I felt. That is how you break free. That is how you stop letting emotions trick you into weakness. The first step is to recognize that emotions are unreliable. They shift, they change, they react to small things that don't matter. They are influenced by sleep, by hunger, by stress, by temporary frustrations. And if you base your actions on them, you will never have consistency. The second step is to separate emotion from action. Just because you feel something does not mean you have to act on it. Just because you feel tired does not mean you skip the work. Just because you feel doubt does not mean you stop pushing forward. Just because you feel angry does not mean you lash out. Emotion is separate from action, and once you understand this, you become untouchable. The third step is to train yourself to act against your feelings. This is where real strength is built. When you don't feel like doing something, but you do it anyway. When you feel fear, but you push forward anyway. When you feel discouraged, but you keep going anyway. Every time you act against your emotions, you weaken their control over you. Most people will never do this. They will keep being pulled by their moods. They will keep letting temporary emotions sabotage permanent progress. They will keep making decisions based on how they feel in the moment, rather than what actually matters. But you do not have to be like them. You can train yourself to be stronger. You can teach yourself to override emotion with discipline. You can break free from the mental chains that keep most people stuck. When you wake up in the morning, stop asking yourself how you feel. Stop looking for motivation. Stop waiting to be in the right mood. Instead, ask yourself one question: what needs to be done? And then do it. If you live this way, you will be unstoppable, because nothing, no feeling, no doubt, no hesitation will ever have power over you again. You already know that emotions are deceptive. You've seen how they pull people away from discipline, making them weak, inconsistent, and easy to break. But there is something even more dangerous: our addiction to comfort. Comfort is the silent killer of strength. It whispers in your ear, telling you to take it easy, to avoid hardship, to stay in the warmth of safety. And the more you listen to it, the softer you become, the weaker your mind grows. the more fragile you become in the face of real challenges. I had to face this truth myself. I used to think that as long as I was disciplined, as long as I showed up and did what needed to be done, I was strong. But I was still protecting myself from discomfort. I still avoided suffering whenever I could. I still made things easier when I had the choice. And what I didn't realize was that every time I avoided hardship, I was reinforcing weakness. The Stoics knew this. That is why they deliberately sought out difficulty. They practiced hardship on purpose, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood a brutal reality. If you do not expose yourself to discomfort, you will never be strong enough to handle real adversity. Most people avoid pain. They run from struggle. They build their lives around convenience, around minimizing stress, around keeping things as easy as possible, and then they wonder why they collapse when life becomes difficult. But I refuse to live that way, and so should you. The only way to become unbreakable is to seek out discomfort before life forces it upon you, to expose yourself to hardship on purpose, to train your mind and body to endure suffering so that when real challenges come, you do not break. This is not just a mindset. It is a practice. It is something you must do every single day. You must choose to step into discomfort. You must choose to push beyond what is comfortable. You must choose to do things the hard way, even when the easy way is available. Because every time you avoid discomfort, you are training yourself to be weaker. And every time you embrace it, you are forging an unshakable mind. This is why the Stoics would sleep on the floor, even when they had a bed. This is why they would go days without food, even when they had plenty. This is why they would expose themselves to cold, to hunger, to exhaustion. Not because they had to, but because they knew that voluntary hardship makes you indestructible. I had to rewire my own mind for this. I had to stop running from things that were difficult. I had to start putting myself in situations that tested me. And what I found was something powerful. Discomfort is not the enemy. Avoiding discomfort is. The first step is simple. Do not take the easy path when a harder one is available. If you have the choice between convenience and effort, choose effort. If you can take a shortcut or do things the right way, do them the right way. If you can stay in your comfort zone or push into something that scares you, push forward. Most people will never do this. They will keep looking for comfort, for security, for ease, and they will never understand why they feel weak. But you are not most people. You are not here to be comfortable. You are here to be strong. And that means you must train yourself deliberately to endure, to push through pain, to stay in discomfort without breaking, to develop a mindset that is so powerful, so unshakable, that no hardship, no suffering, no challenge will ever stop you. This is not about punishing yourself. It is about preparing yourself. It is about making sure that when life tests you, you do not collapse like everyone else. Because life will test you, and if you have not trained yourself to endure, you will fail. Start now. Do something today that makes you uncomfortable. Train your mind to resist ease. Step into difficulty on purpose. Because the harder you make yourself now, the less anything in this world can ever break you. Comfort is not just about physical ease. It is also about the people, habits, and distractions that keep you soft. You already know that avoiding discomfort makes you weak. But there is something even more insidious, surrounding yourself with weakness and thinking it won't affect you. I had to learn this the hard way. I thought I could be disciplined while still keeping people in my life who made excuses. I thought I could build mental toughness while still engaging in habits that drained my willpower. I thought I could become stronger while keeping one foot in the world of weakness. But I was wrong. Everything you allow into your life either strengthens you or weakens you. There is no neutral. The people around you, the habits you engage in, the things you consume, they are either making you harder, sharper and more disciplined, or they are softening you, dulling your edge, and pulling you into mediocrity. The Stoics understood this. That is why they practiced the ruthless art of self-exile. They removed anything and anyone that made them weaker. They distanced themselves from toxic influences, useless distractions, and anything that compromised their self-discipline. They cut out comfort, not just in their actions, but in their environment. Most people never do this. They hold on to weak relationships because they don't want to be alone. They keep bad habits because they are familiar. They stay in environments that drain them because change is uncomfortable. And then they wonder why they struggle to stay disciplined. But discipline is not just about what you do. It is also about what you refuse to tolerate. If you surround yourself with people who make excuses, you will start making excuses. If you keep habits that waste time and energy, you will never have the focus you need to build real strength. If you allow distractions into your daily life, you will always struggle to stay committed to what matters. I had to purge my life of anything that did not serve my mission, and it was not easy. Cutting people off is hard. Walking away from old habits is hard. Making the choice to isolate yourself from anything that weakens you is hard. But that is the price of becoming unbreakable. The first step is to be brutally honest about what is holding you back. Look at the people around you. Are they pushing you to be better, or are they pulling you into weakness? Do they hold you accountable, or do they encourage your excuses? If the answer is the latter, they have to go. It doesn't matter if they are friends. It doesn't matter if they have been in your life for years. If they are keeping you soft, they are keeping you weak. And if you are serious about building an indestructible mindset, you cannot afford to stay surrounded by people who drain you. The second step is to destroy the habits that make you weaker. Every small indulgence, every unnecessary comfort, every habit that pulls you away from discipline must be eliminated. You do not have time to waste on things that do not serve you. The third step is to create an environment that forces you to be stronger. Your surroundings shape you. If you live in a place filled with distractions, you will be distracted. If your daily routine is filled with comfort, you will become soft. If you let weakness stay in your life, you will never be free from it. The Stoics knew this. That is why they removed themselves from temptation. They trained themselves to be immune to external influences by controlling their environment. And you must do the same. If you are serious about becoming disciplined, about becoming strong, about becoming unstoppable, you must be ruthless. You must exile anything that weakens you. You must cut out everything that does not serve your highest purpose. You must create a world around you that forces you to rise to your greatest potential. Most people will never do this. They will hold on to what is comfortable. They will stay connected to what is familiar, and because of that, they will stay weak. But if you are here, if you have come this far, you are not like most people. You are not looking for comfort. You are looking for transformation. You are looking for strength. And that means you must have the courage to cut ties with anything that does not push you forward. The process will be painful. It will be uncomfortable. It will force you to confront parts of yourself that you have been avoiding. But on the other side of it is something rare: absolute freedom. Freedom from weak influences. Freedom from self-sabotage. Freedom from anything that keeps you from reaching your highest potential. And that freedom is worth everything. Weakness does not just come from external influences. It is not only the people, habits, or comforts that make you soft. The real battle is inside your mind. You can cut out every toxic relationship, remove every distraction, and isolate yourself from anything that weakens you. But if you do not have control over your own thoughts and emotions, you will still fail. Most people do not lose because of outside forces. They lose because they cannot control themselves when chaos strikes. They panic, they react emotionally, they make decisions based on fear or impulse rather than logic and discipline. They let the world dictate their state of mind instead of mastering their own responses. I have seen this in myself. I used to think that if I just worked hard enough, if I just built enough discipline, I would be unbreakable. But I was still reactive. When things didn't go my way, I let frustration take over. When I faced resistance, I let doubt slow me down. When things became chaotic, I lost focus. And I realized that no matter how strong I became physically, no matter how much I controlled my environment, I was still vulnerable, because I had not mastered my mind. This is why the Stoics spent their lives training themselves in self-control. They knew that the real battle was not against the world, but against their own emotions, their own impulses, their own reactions. They built systems, rules, and practices that allowed them to stay calm, stay focused, and stay unshaken no matter what happened around them. Marcus Aurelius led armies through war, ruled an empire during plagues and betrayals, and still remained centered. Epictetus endured slavery, physical suffering, and constant hardship, yet never lost control over his mind. Seneca faced exile, political threats, and even his own ordered execution with absolute composure. They followed a formula, a blueprint for unshakable self-control that has been tested for over 2,000 years. And if you want to reach the highest level of mental toughness, you must follow it too. The first step is understanding that you do not control the world. You do not control other people. You do not control what happens to you. You only control one thing, your own mind. The moment you try to control anything outside of that, you set yourself up for frustration, disappointment, and weakness. Most people waste their energy worrying about things they cannot change. They stress over problems that are not in their hands. They react emotionally to things that have nothing to do with their own actions. This is the first failure. Because every ounce of energy wasted on the uncontrollable is an ounce of energy stolen from what truly matters: your own discipline, your own response, your own ability to take action. The second step is learning to detach from emotion. Emotions are automatic. They arise whether you want them to or not. But just because you feel something does not mean you have to obey it. This is the mistake most people make. They assume that if they feel angry, frustrated, or afraid, they must act on it. But the Stoics understood that emotions are nothing more than signals. They are suggestions, not commands. When I first started practicing this, it felt unnatural. When someone disrespected me, my first reaction was to respond with aggression. When something went wrong, my instinct was to complain or get frustrated. But the more I trained myself to detach, the more I realized something powerful. Most emotions are useless. They do nothing but cloud judgment and waste time. If you can pause, step back, and see emotions for what they are, temporary impulses, you take away their power. You no longer react blindly. You no longer let a moment of weakness dictate your actions. You train yourself to move based on logic, reason, and discipline rather than fleeting feelings. The third step is developing the ability to stay focused in chaos. This is where most people fail. They can be disciplined when things are calm. They can stay in control when everything is going smoothly. But the moment things go wrong, the moment pressure increases, they break. This is why you must practice operating under stress. You must train yourself to stay steady when others panic. You must force yourself to remain clear-headed when everything around you is uncertain, because in life, chaos is inevitable. The only question is whether or not you are prepared to handle it. The Stoics trained for this by deliberately putting themselves in uncomfortable situations. They practiced enduring insults without reacting. They trained themselves to go without food, without comfort, without ease, so that when hardship arrived, they were already prepared. I started testing this in my own life. I forced myself to remain calm in stressful situations. I stopped reacting emotionally to setbacks. I treated challenges as training rather than obstacles. And what I discovered was this: the more you expose yourself to chaos, the more immune you become to it. Most people go through life avoiding discomfort, and because of that, they never develop the ability to stay in control under pressure. But if you train yourself to handle difficulty, if you put yourself in situations that test your ability to remain steady, you become unshakable. The final step is learning to move forward regardless of circumstances. Most people let external conditions determine their actions. If they feel motivated, they work hard. If they are in a good mood, they stay disciplined. But if things go wrong, if life becomes stressful, they slow down or stop completely. This is why they never reach their full potential. They allow the outside world to dictate their internal state. But the Stoic way is different. It does not matter what is happening around you. It does not matter how difficult things are. You act anyway. You remain disciplined anyway. You move forward anyway. This is what separates the weak from the strong. Weak people need conditions to be perfect. They need motivation. They need to feel a certain way. Strong people do not. They train themselves to be consistent no matter what. When I finally understood this, everything changed. I stopped waiting for the right moment. I stopped letting problems slow me down. I stopped allowing stress, emotions, and outside events to control me. And as a result, I became more focused, more disciplined, and more in control than ever before. This is what the Stoics knew. That real power is not found in controlling the world, but in mastering yourself. That the strongest person is not the one who dominates others, but the one who has complete control over their own mind. If you train yourself to follow this blueprint, you will reach a level of mental toughness that few people ever experience. You will no longer be a slave to emotions. You will no longer be controlled by external chaos. You will become someone who is completely unshaken, no matter what happens. And when you reach that level, nothing, no stress, no problem, no hardship, will ever have power over you again. There is one final lie that destroys more dreams, kills more discipline, and weakens more people than anything else. The belief that quitting is an option. No matter how strong someone thinks they are, no matter how much discipline they build, the moment they allow quitting to exist as a possibility, they have already lost. This is what separates those who achieve something great from those who stay stuck in mediocrity. It is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is simply commitment without an escape route. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. Like most people, I thought I was committed. I thought I had the discipline to push through anything. But when things got difficult, when progress felt slow, when my motivation faded, I found myself making excuses. I told myself I needed a break. I convinced myself that I would try again later. And before I even realized it, I had quit. Not suddenly, not in one dramatic moment, but in small, quiet ways. A missed day here, a lack of effort there, a slow drift into hesitation and doubt, until one day I realized I wasn't moving forward anymore. And when I looked back at every time I had failed, every time I had lost momentum, every time I had walked away from something that mattered, I saw the same pattern. I always left myself an escape route. I always allowed quitting to be an option. That was the problem, and that was the only thing that had to change. The moment I made the decision to burn the escape routes, everything shifted. There was no more debate in my head, no more wasted energy arguing with myself, no more hesitation when things became difficult. The only option was forward, and because there was no way out, I pushed through every obstacle. This is what the Stoics understood. This is why they were able to endure suffering, pain, and hardship without breaking. They did not give themselves permission to stop. They did not allow weakness to be an option. Most people fail not because they are incapable, but because they keep quitting when it gets hard. They tell themselves they will start again later. They justify taking breaks that turn into months, years, and sometimes forever. But if you truly want to master yourself, if you want to achieve anything great, you must eliminate the possibility of quitting. You must remove every escape route and force yourself to move forward, no matter what. The first step to doing this is to understand the cost of quitting. People think quitting is harmless. They think stopping and restarting is normal. But what they do not realize is that every time you quit, you train yourself to quit faster next time. Your mind remembers everything you do. Every time you walk away when things get tough, every time you convince yourself that you will start again later, you are teaching yourself that quitting is acceptable. You are wiring your brain to expect an exit. And the more you do it, the weaker you become. Because the truth is, quitting never gets easier. It only gets more automatic. This is why some people live their entire lives failing over and over again. It is not because they lack ability. It is because they have trained themselves to give up whenever things get difficult. But when you remove quitting as an option, when you commit so deeply that there is no turning back, your mind adapts. It stops searching for an escape. It stops hesitating when things become painful. It stops looking for an easier path. You train yourself to endure. You train yourself to push forward, no matter the difficulty. And once you do this, you become unstoppable. The second step is to make the decision before the pain arrives. Most people do not decide in advance. They wait until they are in the middle of the struggle, and then they try to decide whether or not to keep going. But in that moment, the mind will always take the easy way out. If you leave room for hesitation, if you leave room for debate, you will always find a reason to stop. This is why the decision must be made before the difficulty comes. You must commit so fully that when pain, exhaustion, or frustration hit, quitting is not even a discussion. There is no decision to make because the decision has already been made. This is what makes some people truly unstoppable. It is not that they are immune to pain or fatigue. It is that they refuse to entertain the idea of stopping. They never give themselves a choice. And because of that, they succeed where others fail. The third step is to remove all safety nets. Most people fail because they give themselves a way out. They leave doors open in case things get too hard. They tell themselves they can stop if it becomes uncomfortable. But the moment you give yourself that option, you are already setting yourself up to fail. This is why you must burn every escape route. You must put yourself in situations where quitting is impossible. You must make it so that stopping is not even an option. The Spartans did this before battle. When they went to war, they burned their own boats. This sent one message: we either win or we die. There is no retreat, there is no way out. And that mindset made them fearless. Because once you remove the ability to quit, your mind stops looking for excuses. You do not waste energy second-guessing yourself. You do not spend time debating whether you should continue. You simply push forward because that is the only choice left. This is how you force yourself to be disciplined even when you don't feel like it. This is how you build a mindset that does not break under pressure. This is how you turn yourself into someone who always follows through, no matter what. The fourth step is to embrace suffering as a requirement, not an obstacle. Most people quit because they think difficulty means something is wrong. They feel pain and assume they should stop. They face setbacks and assume they are not meant to continue. But pain is not a signal to stop. It is proof that you are on the right path. The Stoics knew this. They trained themselves to embrace suffering, to see hardship as a test of their discipline, to view pain as something to push through, not avoid. If you want to reach a level of discipline that cannot be broken, you must train yourself the same way. You must expect difficulty. You must welcome struggle. You must prepare for suffering and commit to pushing through it regardless. Because once you stop seeing hardship as an excuse to quit, once you start seeing it as the necessary path to greatness, you will stop looking for ways out. You will start looking for ways forward. The final step is to remove the need for motivation. Most people rely on motivation to keep them going, and that is why they fail. Motivation is a luxury. It is temporary. It comes and goes. If you need motivation to stay committed, you will always be inconsistent. The truly disciplined do not wait to feel ready. They do not need to feel inspired. They act because they have already decided that quitting is not an option. This is what makes them unshakable. This is what allows them to outlast everyone else. It is not talent, it is not luck, it is not intelligence. It is simply the decision to never stop, no matter what. If you truly want to reach your highest level, if you want to build a mind that does not break under pressure, if you want to be the person who always follows through, then you must make this decision now, not later, not when you feel like it. Now. And once the decision is made, there is no going back. No debate, no hesitation, no escape. Because once quitting is no longer an option, success is the only outcome left. Quitting is the disease that keeps people trapped in mediocrity, but the real parasite that feeds this weakness is unchecked desire. Even if you eliminate all escape routes, even if you commit fully, there is still something that can break your discipline, your craving for comfort, pleasure, and ease. Desire is the root of every failure. It whispers in your ear, urging you to take the easier path. It tempts you with instant gratification, distractions, and indulgence. It convinces you that you deserve a break, that you should reward yourself, that you have done enough. And the moment you give in, the discipline you have built begins to rot. The Stoics understood this. They knew that the only way to be truly in control of yourself was to strip desire of its power. To do this, they trained themselves to go without. They starved their temptations until they became nothing more than a quiet whisper in the background. They mastered the art of denying pleasure, not because they hated it, but because they refused to be its slave. Most people cannot do this. They are addicted to their wants. They seek comfort at every opportunity. They indulge in food, entertainment, distractions, and luxuries without restraint. and then they wonder why they cannot stay disciplined. I used to be like this. I thought I was in control, but in reality, my desires controlled me. I told myself I could stop whenever I wanted, but the truth was, I never even tried. I justified every indulgence. I convinced myself I deserved it, and every time I gave in, I was reinforcing weakness. The hardest truth I had to accept was this: if you cannot control what you consume, you cannot control yourself. It is not just about food. It is not just about entertainment. It is about every craving, every impulse, every small indulgence that keeps you weak. Every time you satisfy a desire without resistance, you reinforce the habit of giving in. This is why fasting is so powerful. Not just from food, but from anything that tempts you. Fasting is the deliberate act of starving your desires until they serve you, not control you. The first step to doing this is to identify what controls you. Most people assume they are free, but if you take away their pleasures, you will see how dependent they really are. Try going a day without eating anything unnecessary. See how your mind reacts. Try going a week without mindless entertainment. Watch how restless you become. Try going a month without wasting money on things you don't need. Notice how hard it is. Your reaction tells you everything. If the thought of denying yourself something makes you uncomfortable, that thing has control over you. And if something controls you, it owns you. The second step is to strip pleasure of its power. People do not understand how much power their desires have over them until they deny them. They assume they can stop whenever they want, but they never actually put it to the test. When I first started fasting from pleasure, I felt like I was at war with my own mind. Every craving screamed louder. Every temptation became harder to ignore, but I refused to give in. And what I learned was this: desires are only strong because you keep feeding them. When you stop indulging, when you stop giving your temptations what they want, they begin to weaken. At first, they fight back, but over time they lose their grip. The cravings fade, the impulses quiet down. You realize that you never actually needed what you thought you couldn't live without. And when you reach that point, you become powerful. Because now, when temptation appears, it no longer has control over you. You can engage with it when you choose, but you are no longer its slave. The third step is to train yourself to live with less. Most people believe they need far more than they actually do. They think they need 3 meals a day. They think they need constant entertainment. They think they need comfort at all times. But these are illusions created by habit, not reality. The Stoics trained themselves by practicing voluntary hardship. They fasted not just from food, but from luxury, from indulgence, from anything that made them dependent. They slept on the floor when they had a bed. They ate simple meals when they had access to feasts. They wore plain clothes when they could afford wealth. Not because they wanted to suffer, but because they knew that the less you need, the stronger you become. I started doing this myself. I reduced my meals to the bare minimum. I removed unnecessary comforts. I stripped my life down to the essentials. And what I found was something powerful: freedom. Because when you train yourself to need less, nothing can control you anymore. The fourth step is to turn desires into tools, not chains. Most people see discipline as deprivation, but that is not the goal. The goal is not to eliminate pleasure forever. It is to make sure pleasure does not control you. If you deny yourself everything forever, you are still being controlled by desire, just in the opposite way. The key is to own your desires rather than be owned by them. Once you have starved your cravings and stripped them of their power, you can reintroduce pleasure in a controlled way. You can allow yourself enjoyment, but on your terms. not as a reaction to impulse, but as a deliberate choice. This is what separates the truly disciplined from those who merely suppress their desires. The goal is not to suffer. The goal is to be free. And true freedom comes when you can engage with pleasure without being enslaved by it. The final step is to make fasting a permanent practice. Fasting is not something you do once. It is something you integrate into your life forever. It is the constant training of the mind to remain in control. Every few months, I reset myself. I cut out all indulgence. I remove every comfort. I fast from everything that tempts me, food, entertainment, distraction, so that I never become weak. Because the moment you stop training, the moment you become comfortable, weakness begins to creep back in. The Stoics understood this. That is why they never stopped. They knew that the mind, like the body, must be trained daily. This is what makes the difference between those who remain disciplined for life and those who collapse after a few months. Most people will never do this. They will remain slaves to their desires. They will continue to give in, thinking they are in control. They will justify every indulgence and convince themselves that moderation is enough. But you are not most people. If you have come this far, if you have already committed to eliminating weakness from your life, then you know that true discipline is total discipline. It is not about balance. It is about control. It is about making sure that nothing, no craving, no comfort, no pleasure has power over you. When you reach that level, you will understand something that most people never will. Freedom is not found in satisfying desires. It is found in mastering them. Weakness does not disappear just because you ignore it. It grows. It waits for the right moment to strike, to take back control, to drag you back into hesitation, self-doubt, and mental fragility. You can starve your desires. You can remove temptations. You can strip yourself of unnecessary comforts. But if you do not go to war with the weakness inside you, it will always find a way to return. This is what separates those who master themselves from those who only pretend to be strong. The Stoics did not just resist weakness. They attacked it like an enemy. They treated mental fragility as a sickness, a disease that needed to be eradicated with discipline, precision, and relentless self-examination. They did not wait for their minds to betray them. They went on the offensive. Most people never do this. They allow doubt to creep in. They let hesitation control their decisions. They permit weakness to exist inside them, hoping that it will stay small, manageable, harmless. But weakness is never harmless. The second you tolerate it, you are already on the path to losing control. I learned this the hard way. I used to believe that as long as I was disciplined most of the time, as long as I was strong in the areas that mattered, I could afford small moments of mental fragility. But every time I allowed doubt, hesitation, or self-pity to exist in my mind, it grew. And before I knew it, those small weaknesses became larger, more frequent, more powerful. They slowed me down. They sabotaged my discipline. They made me second-guess myself at the worst possible moments. I realized that if I wanted to be unbreakable, I could not simply manage weakness. I had to destroy it. This is what the Stoics understood better than anyone else. They did not try to cope with fear. They did not negotiate with hesitation. They did not rationalize their own doubts. They treated these things as enemies, threats to their discipline, threats to their strength, threats to their very existence. And because they attacked their own weaknesses so relentlessly, they became immune to them. The first step in this war is to identify the enemy inside you. Most people assume they are strong until they are tested. They think they have self-control until temptation appears. They think they are fearless until a real challenge forces them to act. But the truth is, weakness hides inside your mind, waiting for the right moment to sabotage you. And if you do not actively search for it, you will never see it coming. I had to force myself to examine my thoughts with brutal honesty. Where did I hesitate? What situations made me anxious? What thoughts made me second-guess myself? Every time I noticed these moments of weakness, I wrote them down. I tracked them. I studied them. I analyzed them like an enemy's battle plan. Because once you know where weakness lives inside you, you can start to kill it. The second step is forcing yourself into discomfort daily. Weakness feeds on comfort. It thrives in ease. If you never push yourself beyond what is comfortable, you will never see how fragile you truly are. This is why most people break. The second life becomes difficult, because they have never actually trained themselves to endure discomfort. The Stoics did not wait for hardship to find them. They actively sought it out. They trained themselves to suffer on purpose. They would deprive themselves of food to prove they could endure hunger. They would sleep on the floor to harden themselves against luxury. They would expose themselves to ridicule and criticism to strengthen their minds against external opinions. They knew that mental strength is built the same way physical strength is, through stress, through resistance, through suffering. I had to start forcing myself into situations that made me uncomfortable. I stopped avoiding fear. I put myself in situations where I had no choice but to face doubt head-on. I took on challenges I wasn't sure I could handle. I trained myself to remain calm in moments of chaos. And the more I did this, the less power hesitation had over me. I became desensitized to fear. I became immune to discomfort. I reached a point where I no longer avoided suffering. I embraced it. The third step is ruthless self-discipline in thought and action. Weakness does not just exist in actions. It starts in the mind. The way you think, the way you talk to yourself, the way you process situations. This is where most battles are won or lost. Most people allow their thoughts to control them. They assume that just because a thought enters their mind, it must be entertained. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that you are not your thoughts. You are the master of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to filter every thought through reason before accepting it. He did not allow emotions to dictate his reality. He did not allow fear to color his perception. He questioned every doubt, every impulse, every weakness, and discarded anything that did not serve him. I started practicing the same thing. The second I noticed a weak thought, self-doubt, hesitation, fear, I shut it down. I refused to let it control me. I replaced it with thoughts of strength, logic, and discipline. And over time, this rewired my mind. Weakness stopped appearing as often. Doubt became quieter. My automatic response to difficulty changed from hesitation to immediate action. The fourth step is training for real battles before they happen. Most people break under pressure because they have never prepared for it. They do not train themselves for difficulty, and when it comes, they are overwhelmed. The Stoics did the opposite. They rehearsed hardship before it arrived. They imagined losing everything so they would not fear loss. They visualized their own death so they would not be afraid of mortality. They mentally placed themselves in the worst situations possible so that if those situations ever became real, they would already be prepared. This is something I started doing every single day. I trained myself to anticipate difficulty, to expect obstacles, to be ready for worst-case scenarios. And because of that, I stopped being surprised by hardship. I stopped being shaken by setbacks. I stopped hesitating in the face of uncertainty. The final step is eliminating all excuses, permanently. Weakness survives on excuses. If you give yourself even one reason to justify hesitation, it will multiply. If you allow even a single excuse to exist in your mind, it will find a way to grow. The Stoics allowed no room for excuses. If something needed to be done, it was done. If a challenge needed to be faced, it was faced. If discipline needed to be followed, it was followed. Without hesitation, without negotiation, without discussion. I had to train myself the same way. I stopped letting my mind negotiate with itself. If something needed to be done, I did it immediately. If a weakness needed to be eliminated, I eliminated it without hesitation. I became merciless with my own excuses. And once you reach this level, something incredible happens. You become unstoppable. Doubt does not slow you down. Fear does not hold you back. Hesitation does not control your decisions. Weakness has no home in your mind because you have spent every day actively destroying it. Most people will never do this. They will let their weaknesses live inside them. They will justify their hesitation. They will allow doubt to take root, and over time, it will grow into something that completely controls them. But if you are serious about becoming indestructible, about reaching a level of discipline that cannot be broken, about mastering yourself completely, then you must attack weakness like an enemy. You must hunt it down. You must expose it. You must destroy it. And once you do, nothing will ever have power over you again. Weakness has been stripped away. Doubt has been destroyed. Hesitation has been eliminated. But there is one final enemy that stands between you and complete control: pain. It is easy to act disciplined when life is comfortable. It is easy to stay focused when there is no suffering. But when pain arrives, whether physical, emotional, or mental, most people break. They collapse under its weight. They let it dictate their actions. They give in to fear, exhaustion, and despair. Pain is the ultimate test of strength. It separates those who only talk about discipline from those who embody it at the deepest level. This is why the Stoics trained themselves to endure suffering without breaking. They knew that if they could master pain, nothing else could ever defeat them. I used to believe I was strong until pain humbled me, until life tested me in ways I was not prepared for, until I found myself doubting whether I had the strength to push through. That was when I realized that strength is not about looking tough. It is not about talking about resilience. It is about what you do when you are suffering. Most people avoid pain. They run from it. They try to escape it. But that is the mistake that keeps them weak. Pain is not something to escape. It is something to master. The Stoics did not just endure suffering. They embraced it. They trained themselves to face it without resistance, without complaint, without allowing it to break their will. And once they mastered this, they became untouchable. The first step in facing pain like a Stoic warrior is understanding that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Most people believe that pain is the enemy. They assume that if they are hurting, something is wrong. But the truth is, pain is a normal part of life. It is unavoidable. You will experience pain, loss, struggle, and hardship. There is no escaping it. But suffering. Suffering is a choice. Suffering is what happens when you resist pain, when you fight against it, when you refuse to accept it. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that the moment you stop resisting pain, it loses its power over you. When I first started applying this, I realized something powerful. Pain is not the problem. The problem is how the mind reacts to it. The second step is detaching yourself from the pain. Pain feels overwhelming because people attach their identity to it. They say, "I am in pain," as if it defines them. But the Stoics trained themselves to separate their minds from their suffering. They observed their pain without letting it consume them. Epictetus, who was born a slave and lived with a permanently damaged leg, taught his students that pain is simply a sensation. It is not bad or unfair. It is only bad if you decide it is. He trained himself to see pain as nothing more than a signal, something that exists but does not control him. And because he refused to see it as something negative, he remained unshaken. I practice this every time I face discomfort. Instead of thinking, "This is unbearable," I trained myself to think, "This is only a feeling. It will pass. It cannot break me." And the more I did this, the less control pain had over me. It became something I observed, not something I feared. The third step is using pain as a weapon, not a weakness. Most people treat pain as an excuse to stop. They slow down when they feel discomfort. They back off when things become difficult. But the Stoics did the opposite. They used pain as a way to train themselves. They saw every moment of suffering as a chance to grow stronger, to build their endurance, to harden themselves. Seneca, one of the most powerful men in Rome, would deliberately place himself in situations of discomfort just to remind himself that pain had no power over him. He would sleep on the floor when he had the luxury of a bed. He would eat the simplest food when he could afford feasts. He would deprive himself of comfort so that when real hardship arrived, he was already prepared. I took this lesson and applied it in my own life. Every time I faced pain, I treated it like a test. Instead of seeing it as something that was happening to me, I saw it as something that was happening for me. And once I started thinking this way, I became fearless. The fourth step is embracing voluntary hardship. If you wait for life to test you, you will always be caught off guard. This is why the Stoics trained themselves by seeking out difficult situations. They did not wait for pain. They chose it. They fasted when they did not have to. They exposed themselves to cold when warmth was available. They lived simply when they had the option for luxury, not because they hated pleasure, but because they knew that a life without hardship makes you weak. I used to avoid discomfort. I thought that if I could just structure my life correctly, I could eliminate difficulty. But the more I avoided pain, the softer I became. So I changed. I stopped waiting for difficulty to come to me. I forced myself into it. I fasted regularly, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to train my mind. I exercised when I was exhausted. I took cold showers when I wanted warmth. And over time, my tolerance for pain increased. Most people only experience suffering when life forces it upon them. But if you train yourself to embrace hardship, you will never be caught unprepared. The final step is removing all complaints, forever. The moment you complain about pain, you give it power over you. Most people waste their energy resisting discomfort. They say, "This isn't fair." They focus on how hard things are. They tell themselves that they shouldn't have to go through what they are facing. But none of that changes reality. Complaining about pain does not make it disappear. It does not make it easier. It only makes you weaker. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful emperors in history, faced war, betrayal, and personal tragedy. But he never complained. He understood that pain is part of the path. He knew that resisting pain only made it worse. So instead, he accepted it completely. That is the mindset of a Stoic warrior. I trained myself the same way. I eliminated complaining from my mind. I removed phrases like, "This isn't fair," and replaced them with, "This is just another challenge. I will endure it." And once I stopped wasting energy on complaining, I realized something. Pain had no control over me anymore. Most people will never do this. They will continue to resist pain, to fear suffering, to let discomfort dictate their actions. But if you are serious about becoming unbreakable, you must go beyond endurance. You must embrace pain. You must use it as a tool. You must welcome it as a necessary part of your transformation. Because once you master pain, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, nothing can ever break you. Pain hardens the mind, but discipline keeps it in check. Strength alone is not enough. Even the strongest willpower can be sabotaged by one mistake, a single impulsive decision that throws everything off course. The greatest enemy of discipline is not just suffering or hardship. It is acting on impulse without control. The mind is constantly at war with itself. There is the disciplined part of you, the side that wants to be strong, that wants to stay focused, that wants to keep moving forward no matter what. And then there is the impulsive part, the part that looks for shortcuts, that craves pleasure, that wants immediate relief from discomfort. These two forces are always in conflict, and in the heat of the moment, impulse often wins. It happens fast. A craving appears, and suddenly, without even thinking, you give in. A moment of frustration arrives, and before you know it, you react emotionally. An opportunity to take the easy way out presents itself, and just like that, discipline crumbles. The worst part, most people don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. They make a bad decision in an instant, but the consequences last far longer. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that self-control is not about forcing yourself to be strong in the moment. It is about preventing the impulse from ever taking control. They trained themselves to master delay, to shut down irrational reactions before they had a chance to cause destruction. They developed a simple but powerful rule that kept them from making mistakes they would regret: the 24-hour rule. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. I used to believe that discipline meant just resisting temptation when it appeared. But what I didn't realize was that by the time I was resisting, I had already lost half the battle. The moment an impulse arrives, the emotional mind takes over. It doesn't think. It doesn't rationalize. It doesn't weigh long-term consequences. It acts. This is why impulse control is one of the highest forms of discipline, because it requires you to fight before the moment of weakness arrives. It requires you to put a barrier between thought and action, so that by the time you do decide, it is no longer your emotions making the choice. The first key to mastering impulse is understanding that every bad decision comes from a temporary emotion. The biggest mistakes in life are rarely planned. They happen in moments of weakness, when you are exhausted, when you are frustrated, when you are overwhelmed. These are the moments when impulse takes over. And this is when people do the things that destroy their progress. They break their commitments. They give up on their goals. They ruin relationships, waste time, fall into bad habits. Not because they are weak people, but because they allow emotion to dictate their choices. The Stoics trained themselves to never act immediately on impulse. If something triggered them, if they felt a strong urge to do something, they did not respond instantly. They waited. They let the emotion pass. They gave themselves space to think clearly before making any decision. I started applying this to every part of my life. Any time I felt a strong reaction, whether it was anger, craving, impatience, or even excitement, I forced myself to wait. I told myself, give it 24 hours. If it still matters tomorrow, then decide. And the results were unbelievable. I stopped reacting emotionally to situations that used to throw me off balance. I avoided countless bad decisions simply by waiting. I realized that most of my impulses disappeared completely once I gave myself enough time to think clearly. The second key is learning to recognize the trigger before it controls you. Most people do not even realize they are acting on impulse. They just follow their emotions without questioning them. They feel a craving, so they satisfy it. They feel anger, so they lash out. They feel boredom, so they distract themselves. It happens automatically, without awareness. But if you can learn to recognize the moment when impulse begins, you can shut it down before it takes over. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to be hyper-aware of his own thoughts. He observed them like an outsider. He would notice when irritation, impatience, or frustration started creeping in, and instead of acting, he would step back. He would question his own mind. Why am I feeling this? Is this reaction logical? Is this decision necessary? This is one of the most powerful forms of self-discipline, to separate yourself from your own emotions long enough to see them clearly. When I started doing this, I caught myself in moments I never noticed before. I saw how quickly my mind tried to justify acting on impulse. I saw how often my emotions tried to manipulate me into breaking discipline. And the more I became aware of these moments, the easier it became to control them. The third key is creating a delay between impulse and action. This is where the 24-hour rule becomes the most powerful. If an impulse appears, whether it is an urge to quit, a desire to indulge, or a strong emotional reaction, the rule is simple. Wait 24 hours before making a decision. This does two things. First, it forces you to step out of the emotional state that is driving the impulse. Emotions are temporary. What feels urgent in the moment often feels completely different once time has passed. Second, it gives your rational mind time to take control again. Instead of reacting impulsively, you are able to think. You are able to weigh the consequences. You are able to see the situation from a clear, logical perspective. Seneca taught that the greatest sign of wisdom is the ability to pause before reacting. He advised his students never to make important decisions while in a heightened emotional state. He understood that impulse is not logical, it is not rational, and because of that, any decision made under impulse is likely to be flawed. When I started enforcing this rule, I saw immediate changes in my self-discipline. The cravings that once felt overwhelming disappeared after a few hours. The anger that once made me want to react faded after a good night's sleep. The doubts that made me want to quit seemed ridiculous the next day. The fourth key is building patience as a permanent skill. Most people struggle with impulse because they are addicted to immediacy. They want instant relief, instant gratification, instant resolution. They do not know how to wait. They do not know how to sit with discomfort. They do not know how to delay reaction. But the more you train yourself to wait, the stronger your patience becomes. The stronger your patience becomes, the less power impulse has over you. The Stoics knew that control over one's emotions was the highest form of self-mastery. They believed that a person who reacts impulsively is enslaved by their emotions, but a person who can delay reaction, who can pause before acting, is truly free. I learned that patience is not something you are born with. It is something you train. Every time I forced myself to wait before acting, I was strengthening my ability to control myself. And over time, what used to feel impossible, resisting temptation, staying calm in stressful moments, making rational choices under pressure, became second nature. The final key is eliminating the habit of impulsivity forever. This is not a one-time trick. This is not something you do only when you remember. This must become a permanent part of how you operate. Every time you apply the 24-hour rule, you are retraining your brain. You are teaching yourself that reaction is a choice, not a reflex. You are building the habit of self-control so deeply that it becomes automatic. And once you master this, you become untouchable. Most people will never do this. They will continue to act impulsively, to let their emotions dictate their actions, to sabotage themselves without even realizing it. But those who train themselves to delay reaction, to control impulse, to act with logic instead of emotion, they become unbreakable. Because once you learn to master time, to use it as a weapon against weakness, there is nothing in life that can shake you. Mastering impulse control is a powerful weapon, but discipline must go deeper than simply resisting urges. If every moment of discipline feels like a battle, if every day is spent fighting against your own mind, then you have not truly mastered self-discipline. The highest level of control is not just forcing yourself to do what is difficult, but rewiring your brain so that discipline becomes your natural instinct. Most people rely on motivation. They wait to feel inspired. They chase fleeting bursts of energy, and when that fades, they fall back into comfort. But I realized that true discipline is not about forcing myself to suffer. It is about training my brain to crave discipline as much as it once craved comfort. The mistake I made for years was thinking discipline was something external. I thought it was about strict routines, hard rules, and constant self-denial. But the more I studied the Stoics, the more I understood that discipline is not just a set of actions. It is a way of thinking. It is a complete transformation of how the mind processes pain, effort, and reward. The reason most people fail is that their brain is wired to seek comfort as the highest priority. Every habit, every craving, every action is dictated by a simple equation: what brings the fastest pleasure with the least resistance? This is why so many people struggle to stay disciplined. Their brain associates effort with suffering, discomfort with pain, and challenge with exhaustion. They are literally programmed to avoid anything that feels difficult. But this programming is not permanent. The brain is adaptable. It rewires itself based on how it is used. And just as it has been trained to seek comfort, it can be retrained to crave discipline. The first step in rewiring the brain is changing its relationship with effort. For most of my life, I saw effort as something to endure. I forced myself to wake up early, to work harder, to push through discomfort. But deep down, I still viewed these things as sacrifices. I was still operating under the belief that comfort was the natural state and discipline was an interruption. But the Stoics never saw effort as a burden. They saw it as the very source of strength. They knew that what the mind associates with pain or pleasure determines everything. If effort feels like suffering, discipline will always be exhausting. But if effort feels like growth, then discipline becomes addictive. I started to train myself differently. Instead of focusing on the pain of effort, I focused on the result. I trained my brain to associate discomfort with improvement, struggle with power, and hardship with mental growth. Instead of seeing difficulty as something to get through, I saw it as something to seek out. And the moment my brain accepted this shift, everything changed. The second step is rewarding discipline, not comfort. Most people reinforce the wrong behaviors. They push through discomfort, but then they reward themselves with indulgence. They work hard, then treat themselves with laziness. They diet for a week, then binge on food as a reward. And every time they do this, they are programming their brain to see discipline as something negative and comfort as something positive. The brain learns through association. If you constantly associate hard work with exhaustion and pleasure with ease, you will always struggle with discipline. But if you reverse the equation, if you make discipline itself feel rewarding, your brain will start to crave it. I trained myself to feel satisfaction from effort itself. I removed the idea of needing a reward for discipline. Instead of thinking, I worked hard, now I deserve a break, I started thinking, I worked hard, and that alone is the reward. Instead of seeing struggle as something to escape, I saw it as proof that I was becoming stronger. At first, this felt unnatural. My brain resisted. It wanted comfort. It wanted escape. It wanted the easy path. But I refused to give in. I reinforced the feeling of pride, the sense of mastery, the internal reward that comes from doing what is difficult. And the more I practiced this, the more my brain started craving discipline on its own. The third step is turning discipline into identity. Most people struggle with discipline because they see it as something external, something they do rather than something they are. They think of it as a temporary action rather than a fundamental part of their character. The Stoics never viewed discipline as optional. They never saw it as something to apply only when convenient. It was not a habit. It was their entire way of life. The moment you start identifying as a disciplined person, everything changes. If discipline is something you try to do, you will always fail when it gets hard. But if it is simply who you are, you will not need motivation. You will not negotiate with yourself. You will not waste time debating whether to act. You will just do it. I trained myself to eliminate the option of weakness. There was no, should I wake up early? I just did. There was no, should I push myself today? I already knew the answer. Discipline became as natural as breathing. The fourth step is making discipline automatic. The brain hates decision fatigue. The more choices you give yourself, the weaker your discipline becomes. Most people struggle with self-control not because they lack willpower, but because they exhaust it by making too many decisions. This is why the Stoics removed choice from discipline. They made their actions automatic. They did not waste time debating whether to train their mind, whether to push through hardship, whether to keep going. It was already decided. I stopped making discipline a choice. I structured my life so that discipline was the default state. I did not allow distractions. I did not entertain excuses. I did not leave room for negotiation. I set hard rules for myself, and I followed them without debate. And the result? Discipline became effortless. The final step is removing all dependence on external motivation. Most people fail because they rely on feeling like doing something, but motivation is a fleeting emotion. Some days it is there, some days it is not. And if your discipline depends on motivation, you will always be inconsistent. The Stoics never waited for motivation. They acted regardless of how they felt. They saw every action as a duty, not an option. I trained myself to operate the same way. If I did not feel like training, I trained anyway. If I did not feel like working, I worked anyway. If I did not feel like pushing myself, I pushed harder. And the more I did this, the less I needed motivation. Because I no longer relied on feeling like it, I became the kind of person who acts no matter what. Most people will never do this. They will continue to struggle with discipline because they have not rewired their minds to want it. They will fight against their own desires instead of changing them. They will wait for motivation instead of eliminating the need for it. But if you take these steps, if you train your brain to crave discipline, if you remove the false rewards of comfort and replace them with the real reward of strength, you will reach a level of control that few people ever experience. Discipline will no longer be a battle. It will be automatic. It will be instinctive. It will be who you are. And when that happens, you will no longer chase discipline. It will chase you. Rewiring the brain for discipline is the foundation, but without a daily practice to reinforce it, the mind will always try to return to comfort. No matter how strong you become, no matter how disciplined you think you are, if you do not condition your mind every single day, you will eventually slip. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They understood that discipline is not something you achieve once. It is something you must train, test, and strengthen every single day. They did not leave their mental resilience to chance. They designed rituals to keep their minds sharp, unbreakable, and immune to weakness. This is where most people fail. They think discipline is a one-time decision. They assume that because they have been strong once, they will always be strong. But the mind does not work like that. Just like a muscle, it will atrophy without training. If you do not reinforce discipline daily, the mind will default back to its old patterns. And before you even realize it, weakness will creep back in. I had to learn this the hard way. I used to rely on bursts of motivation. I would push myself hard for weeks, thinking I had mastered discipline. But then life would get chaotic. Distractions would appear. One skipped routine would turn into two. And suddenly, I was struggling with the same mental battles I thought I had already won. That was when I realized that discipline is not about intensity. It is about consistency. The Stoics had a method for this, a ritual so powerful, so effective, that it ensured they would never slip into weakness. A single daily practice that kept their minds sharp and their discipline unbreakable. The first key to this ritual is mental preparation before the day even begins. Most people wake up and react to life. They roll out of bed and immediately start responding to the world. Emails, messages, distractions. They allow their external environment to dictate their mindset. But the Stoics never started their day without first training their mind. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most disciplined men in history, would begin every morning by reminding himself of what he would face. He would mentally prepare for hardship, for discomfort, for resistance. Before stepping into the world, he had already fortified his mind. I started applying this immediately. Every morning before doing anything else, I sat in silence. I anticipated the challenges I would face. I reminded myself that discomfort was coming, that temptation would appear, that distractions would try to break my focus. And I made the decision, before the day even started, that I would not break. And the effect was immediate. Instead of being caught off guard by stress, I expected it. Instead of being overwhelmed by challenges, I had already prepared for them. My mind became like armor, impenetrable, unshaken, prepared for whatever came next. The second part of the ritual is deliberate exposure to discomfort. Mental preparation is important, but it is useless without action. The Stoics understood that thought alone does not make you strong. Training does. Every single day, they would voluntarily expose themselves to hardship. They would fast when they did not need to. They would go without comfort when comfort was available. They would put themselves in difficult situations on purpose. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they knew resistance is what makes the mind strong. This changed everything for me. I stopped waiting for difficulty to appear. I created it. I started doing things daily that forced my mind to battle against weakness. Cold showers were not about health. They were about teaching my brain to stop complaining. Fasting was not about dieting. It was about proving that hunger had no control over me. Physical training was not about fitness. It was about strengthening my willpower. And after weeks of doing this, something happened. My brain stopped resisting hardship. Instead of avoiding discomfort, I craved it. Instead of hesitating when things got hard, I embraced it. Instead of trying to escape struggle, I saw it as proof that I was growing stronger. The third part of the ritual is self-examination at the end of every day. Most people never track their discipline. They go through life without measuring their actions, without questioning their behavior, without reflecting on their failures. And this is why they never improve, because what is not measured cannot be mastered. The Stoics would end every single day with deep self-reflection. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, would review his actions before going to sleep. He would ask himself, "Where did I fail today? Where did I succeed? What can I do better tomorrow?" And this was not self-criticism. It was self-mastery. I started doing the same thing. At night I would sit alone and review the day. I would write down where I had hesitated, where I had allowed weakness to creep in, where I had not lived up to my own standard. And I would commit, not just to do better, but to make sure that failure would not repeat itself. This level of awareness changed everything. It removed all self-delusion. It forced me to hold myself accountable. It made it impossible for weakness to grow unnoticed. The final part of the ritual is never skipping a single day. This is where most people fail. They start strong. They apply discipline for a while, but then they miss a day. They tell themselves it is fine, that one day does not matter, but one day turns into 2, then 3, then a complete collapse of discipline. The Stoics never allowed this. They understood that discipline is a chain, and once it breaks, it is difficult to rebuild. I learned to never skip. No matter how tired, no matter how distracted, no matter how chaotic life became, I showed up. I followed the ritual. I trained my mind. I did not allow excuses. And the result? Discipline became automatic. Most people will never do this. They will continue searching for motivation, waiting for the right moment, hoping discipline will somehow become easy. But those who apply this daily ritual will reach a level of self-mastery that few will ever understand. Because once you reinforce discipline every single day, it becomes unshakable. And when discipline becomes unshakable, you become unstoppable. The daily ritual builds discipline, but there is one final barrier that separates the strong from the weak: the mindset that allows no excuses, no complaints, and no retreat. Everything before this was training. Now, it is time to eliminate every remaining weakness that holds you back. The world is full of people who have trained, who have learned, who have pushed themselves to improve, but the ones who truly become unbreakable are those who remove every excuse from their thinking. Excuses are the language of failure. Complaints are the mindset of the weak. The moment you allow them into your life, you allow your strength to fade. There is no room for them in the mind of someone who wants to be unshakable. This was the hardest lesson I ever had to learn. For years, I believed I was disciplined. I worked hard. I trained myself to be mentally tough. But I still had moments where I justified my failures. I told myself I had valid reasons for not following through. I thought my struggles were different, that my obstacles were harder than other people's. But the truth? I was making excuses. Excuses come disguised as logic. They sound like reasonable justifications. They trick the mind into believing weakness is acceptable. But every single excuse, no matter how rational it seems, is a form of self-betrayal. It is the mind, looking for permission to be weak. The Stoics never allowed this. Marcus Aurelius, leading an empire through war, plague, and betrayal, never once wrote about how unfair life was. Epictetus, born a slave, tortured and crippled, never once said that his situation justified self-pity. Seneca, stripped of power and forced into exile, never once complained about his fate. They had every reason to make excuses, but they refused. And that is what separates those who win at life from those who stay stuck. I had to confront myself with this truth. I had to strip away every false justification, every "I'm tired," or "it's not the right time," or "this is too difficult." Every single excuse had to be eliminated. I realized that the moment I allowed myself to make one excuse, it became easier to make another, and then another. And before I knew it, discipline was gone. Strength was gone. I was falling back into weakness without even realizing it. Excuses do not come all at once. They arrive in small doses. They appear as simple compromises, but they are a disease, and if you allow one, it spreads. The only way to kill this disease is to refuse to entertain a single excuse ever again. It does not matter if it is justified. It does not matter if it is logical. The moment you start arguing for your limitations, you are already defeated. I learned to tell myself one simple rule. If I set a standard, I follow it. No exceptions. No negotiating with myself. No just this once. No bending the rules. It was hard at first. My mind fought back. It looked for ways to sneak in small justifications, but I refused to allow them. And the more I did this, the more I realized something powerful. Excuses only control those who listen to them. When you refuse to give them power, they disappear. The next thing that had to go was complaining. At first, I thought complaining was harmless. I believed it was just expressing frustration. But I was wrong. Complaining does not just reflect a weak mindset. It creates one. Every complaint reinforces helplessness. It conditions the mind to believe in limitations. It trains you to focus on what is wrong instead of what can be done. The Stoics saw complaining as the most useless thing a person could do. It achieves nothing. It changes nothing. It only makes you weaker. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." If you are complaining about hardship, you have already lost the lesson. You are wasting time resisting what could be making you stronger. I forced myself to go one full day without a single complaint. It was harder than I expected. My mind was addicted to finding problems. But when I stopped complaining, I noticed something incredible. Every moment I would have spent complaining was now being used to find solutions. Every complaint that died in my throat was replaced by a new level of clarity, focus, and action. I stopped seeing problems as things to be upset about and started treating them like training. The harder things got, the more I saw it as proof that I was getting stronger. And once that became my mindset, nothing could shake me. The final piece of this code is no retreat. Most people quit not because they are weak, but because they leave themselves an exit strategy. They allow failure as an option. They tell themselves, if this gets too hard, I can always stop. And the moment things do get hard, their mind takes the easy way out. This is why the strongest people burn the escape routes. They remove quitting as an option. Marcus Aurelius never told himself, if this war becomes too difficult, I will step down. Epictetus never said, if this pain is unbearable, I will give up. They committed fully, with no backup plan. I had to do the same. Every time I started something, I made quitting impossible. I made it clear that once I committed, I would finish, no matter what. This changed everything. Without an escape, my only choice was to push forward. Without a retreat, I had to find a way through. And without the option to quit, my mind adapted to endure anything. The reason most people never achieve their full strength is that they allow weakness to remain in the background, waiting to take over. I refuse to allow that. I refuse to entertain weakness, even in my thoughts. And once I mastered this, I became untouchable. No more excuses, no more complaints, no more retreat. Most people will never do this. They will continue justifying their failures, complaining about their obstacles, and giving themselves ways to quit. And that is why they will always remain average. But those who remove every weakness from their mind will become something else entirely. They will become unbreakable. When you eliminate excuses, complaints, and the option to retreat, you reach a point where only one thing remains: reality itself. No more blaming, no more resisting, no more fighting against what is. This is where true power begins. Most people waste their lives arguing with reality. They resent their circumstances. They wish things were different. They fight against hardship as if resisting will somehow make it disappear. But reality does not bend to emotions. Life does not care how much you complain about it. The more you resist, the more you suffer. The Stoics understood this at the highest level. They practiced amor fati, the radical discipline of loving whatever happens, not just accepting it, loving it, embracing it fully, as if it was exactly what they wanted. At first, I hated this idea. How could I possibly love things I did not choose? How could I love setbacks, pain, failure? But the more I studied the minds of the strongest Stoics, the more I saw that resistance was my greatest source of suffering, not the events themselves. The moment you stop resisting what is, you become untouchable. Pain is real. Hardship is real. But suffering is optional. I had spent years making my own life harder by resisting the things I could not change. I fought against my circumstances, my failures, my struggles, wasting energy on emotions that led nowhere. But then I applied the mindset of amor fati, and everything shifted. The first key to this is understanding that resistance multiplies pain. Something difficult happens. You experience loss, rejection, hardship. That pain is real, but the mind makes it worse. Instead of simply feeling it, you argue against it. You tell yourself it should not be happening. You ask why life is unfair. You demand that things be different. And all of this only adds layers of unnecessary suffering. The Stoics eliminated this by training themselves to stop arguing with life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Nothing was wasted. Everything, no matter how painful, became fuel. Instead of resisting hardship, he used it. Instead of seeing problems as obstacles, he saw them as raw material to make himself stronger. I started applying this instantly. Every time I faced something difficult, I caught myself before resistance could take over. Instead of fighting reality, I leaned into it. I told myself, this is happening. Now, what will I do with it? And the more I did this, the faster my suffering disappeared. The second key is understanding that life is not against you. It is shaping you. Most people live in a constant battle with what happens to them. They see obstacles as punishment. They think bad luck follows them. They take hardship personally. But the truth is, life does not care about you. It is neither against you nor for you. It simply is. The universe moves, events unfold, and whether they are good or bad is only a matter of how you choose to perceive them. The Stoics mastered this. They did not see struggle as something unfair. They saw it as the exact experience they needed to grow. Epictetus was born into slavery, beaten and mistreated, yet he never saw himself as a victim. He did not waste time resenting his fate. He used it. He saw everything, his suffering, his limitations, his chains, as tools to build an indestructible mind. And that is what made him unbreakable. I started applying this in my own life. Every time something difficult happened, I stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, I asked, "How is this shaping me?" And that changed everything. The third key is learning to fully embrace what is, instead of wishing for what isn't. Most people never find peace because they are always somewhere else in their minds. They are stuck in the past, regretting things they cannot change, or they are obsessed with the future, hoping it will be different. But this moment right now is the only thing that is real, and if you do not learn to embrace it fully, completely, with no resistance, you will never be free. The Stoics trained themselves to love exactly where they were. If they were in war, they embraced war. If they were in poverty, they embraced poverty. If they were betrayed, they embraced betrayal. Not because they were weak, but because they knew that fighting what already exists is madness. I had spent so much of my life wishing things were different, wanting a different past, hoping for an easier future. But the more I fought against reality, the more I suffered. The moment I accepted everything exactly as it was, I felt a level of power I had never experienced before. The fourth key is understanding that you do not have to like something to love it. This is what most people get wrong about amor fati. They think it means pretending to enjoy bad things. But loving something does not mean liking it. It means embracing it fully, whether it is pleasant or not. A fighter does not have to like pain, but he must love the fight. A warrior does not have to enjoy battle, but he must embrace the battlefield. Loving fate means refusing to let it weaken you. It means looking at every event and saying, "Good, now I get to become stronger." When things went wrong in my life, I stopped complaining. I stopped resisting. Instead, I told myself, this is exactly what I needed. I will use this. And when you operate this way, nothing can break you. The final key is realizing that once you love fate, you control it. Most people believe they are at the mercy of life. They think fate controls them. They believe they have no power. But the moment you embrace amor fati, you take full control. Because now, nothing can work against you. Every setback is fuel. Every hardship is training. Every pain is growth. The people who suffer the most are the ones who refuse to accept reality. The ones who never grow are the ones who resist life itself. The Stoics knew that when you love fate, you win no matter what happens. That is why they were fearless. That is why they never broke. That is why they were unshakable in the face of anything. Most people will never live this way. They will continue resisting, fighting against things they cannot change, making themselves suffer needlessly. But those who embrace amor fati, who train themselves to love every single event, no matter what, will become something else entirely. They will become truly free. Loving fate is the foundation, but what comes next is the real test. What will you do with it? Amor fati is not passive. It is not about sitting back and accepting life as it is. It is about taking every single thing, no matter how difficult, and using it to become unrecognizable from the person you are today. Most people want to change. They talk about becoming stronger, more disciplined, more powerful, but they do not understand that real transformation is not about small improvements. It is about becoming someone completely different. The version of you that is unshakable, unstoppable, and unbreakable cannot be built through half measures. If you look at your life right now and recognize yourself from a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, then you have not transformed. You have simply maintained. That is not growth. That is stagnation. The person I was before I truly committed to self-transformation is a stranger to me now. That version of me was weak. That version of me was controlled by emotions, distractions, and comfort. That version of me made excuses and justified weakness. That version of me no longer exists. I had to kill the old me. I had to destroy the mindset that kept me small. I had to break every habit that held me back. I had to become someone the past version of me would not even recognize. The first step in true transformation is breaking all ties with weakness. Most people try to change while keeping a connection to their old ways. They still engage in the same distractions. They still keep the same toxic people around. They still indulge in the same comforts that made them weak in the first place. And they wonder why transformation never happens. When I committed to becoming unrecognizable, I cut off everything that did not align with who I wanted to be. I stopped seeking entertainment and started seeking mental fortification. I stopped surrounding myself with people who reinforced comfort and started aligning with those who lived with discipline. I burned the bridges to my old self so completely that there was no way back. The second step is rebuilding identity from the ground up. I had to strip away every false belief that was holding me back. Every thought of "I can't," every assumption of "I'm not that kind of person," every excuse disguised as a personal trait. Most people stay the same because they identify with their weaknesses. They say, "I'm not a morning person. I've always struggled with self-control. I just don't have the motivation." They reinforce their own limitations by making them part of who they are. I had to destroy those lies. The version of me I was building did not tolerate limitations. He was not weak. He did not seek comfort. He was not held back by old habits. I told myself daily, the person I am now is dead. I am only who I choose to become. The moment you stop identifying with weakness, you remove its power. The third step is conditioning the mind to embrace difficulty as its new normal. People want transformation without suffering. They want growth without discomfort. They want to be stronger without enduring anything that requires strength. This is why most people will never change. I knew that if I wanted to become someone unshakable, I had to put myself through conditions that shook me. I stopped waiting for life to test me. I created my own tests. I denied myself comfort. I trained when I did not feel like training. I forced myself into situations that demanded mental toughness. And I did this every single day until difficulty felt natural. There is no other way. If you avoid struggle, you stay weak. If you resist challenge, you stay the same. The Stoics voluntarily walked into hardship because they knew that growth does not happen in comfort. The fourth step is relentless commitment to self-discipline with no negotiations. Most people negotiate with themselves. They decide to work hard, but then they allow exceptions. They say they will push through, but then they make compromises, and before they realize it, they are right back where they started. When I committed to becoming unrecognizable, I stopped negotiating. I did not let feelings dictate my actions. I did not allow fatigue to be an excuse. I did not entertain weakness for a single moment. Discipline was not optional, it was law. And this was the real difference. Most people think discipline is about motivation, but it has nothing to do with feelings. It is about setting an order for your life and following it without hesitation, without debate, without excuse. When I eliminated negotiations, I freed myself from inconsistency. The fifth step is making discomfort permanent. People think they can train discipline for a period of time and then go back to comfort. But the moment you go back, you start to weaken. I made the decision. Comfort is no longer an option. I did not allow myself to slip back into old patterns. I did not reward myself with laziness. I made self-discipline my new baseline. If you do not do this, if you believe that you can build discipline and then stop training it, you will fall apart the moment you face true hardship. The Stoics never stopped training their minds. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, practiced voluntary discomfort daily. Seneca, even in luxury, trained himself to go without. They understood that the moment you allow yourself to soften, you have already lost. The final step is becoming the kind of person who does not tolerate anything but strength. Weakness does not disappear overnight. It lingers. It tries to find its way back into your mind. It waits for a moment of fatigue, a second of hesitation, an excuse disguised as logic. This is why I had to become the kind of person who does not allow weakness in any form. I did not entertain complaints. I did not accept self-pity. I did not listen to any thought that encouraged me to slow down. I rewired my mind to see anything less than full commitment as failure. This is the discipline of becoming unrecognizable. This is the path to transformation. It is not a game. It is not temporary. It is not for the weak. Most people will never do this. They will stay attached to their past self. They will hold on to old excuses. They will allow small indulgences to pull them back. But those who fully commit will reach a level of strength that is rare, unstoppable, and completely unshakable. And when you reach that point, you will look back at the person you used to be and realize that person no longer exists. Discipline is not something you wake up with one day. It is built, tested, broken, and rebuilt over and over again until it is unshakable. I know because I lived it. I was weak because I tolerated comfort. I made excuses. I relied on motivation, and I let my emotions dictate my actions. That version of me no longer exists. The moment I took full responsibility for my mind, my actions, and my life, everything changed. I stopped seeking comfort and started training my mind like a soldier. I burned the escape routes. I killed self-indulgence. I embraced hardship, suffering, and discomfort as my greatest tools for growth. The lesson is simple. If you cannot control yourself, you control nothing. The world is brutal, and life does not care about your excuses. But the second you stop resisting, the second you stop blaming, the second you accept that discipline is the only path to freedom, you become something that cannot be broken. Now, I leave you with one question. Are you willing to become unrecognizable? Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the one weakness you refuse to tolerate any longer? I want to hear your answer, and more importantly, I want to see what you do about it. And if you want to keep building an unbreakable mind, subscribe now. This is not a channel for the weak. This is a place for those who are ready to take control and dominate their lives. If that is you, hit subscribe. Your transformation starts now.